Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Halo Tarmac. That is Circuit de la Sarthe for the fourth round of the VMS Pro Series here in Le Mans, France. This is our second endurance round of the season, but it has been 3 rounds of a spectacular, unpredictable, exciting drama. 2 classes, 3 different winners so far in Hypercar and GT3, and all of our championships still very, very wide open, but with a couple of standout contenders that are looking to really impress in what could be a pivotal round in the season. My name is Edward Hunter. Joining me in the commentary box is the one and only Braden Hill, and of course our broadcast director Nicolas Domino. So Braden, welcome back. I've of course been covering Contender last week or so on both Fridays just to fill the time essentially, but we're now finally back with the pros, and yeah, they certainly are hoping they haven't missed a beat, of course, coming back to Le Mans Ultimate and coming back to one of the most iconic endurance races there is here at Le Mans, and it's going to be a long 2 hours 40 minutes, that's for sure, but certainly not as long as a full 24 hours.
Yeah, and after 2 weeks, really, since the last time we found ourselves broadcasting, these drivers are going to be raring and ready to go for a race around the circuit from which this game, this sim, gets its name, Le Mans Ultimate. One of the most iconic series, iconic tracks around the world, and iconic events around the world. Now we'll only be doing a little bit over 2.5 hours of racing around here, but I'm sure certainly these drivers will be no less excited about the prospect of winning here at such an iconic circuit.
Indeed they will. Now might be a good point as well to take a quick look, if there's time, at the actual standings in both Hypercar and GT3. So let's start with Hypercar, the overall standings after 3 rounds, of course, at Spa, our first endurance round of the season. Then we had round 2, our first sprint at Interlagos, and then round 3, most recently, Sebring, where they all managed to somehow survive, or some of them did survive the rain, not all of them, of course. But let's see, Michi Hoare, of course, won at Sebring, now leads the championship on 68 points from David Rokchek, our winner in Interlagos, who narrowly beat the man in third. Jene Semenčić, of course, is in third because he had to miss that last sprint race at Sebring because he was traveling from another sim racing event. Ironically enough, these drivers in the Pro Championship seem to live, sleep, eat, and breathe sim racing. Can you eat sim racing? I don't think it tastes very well. But anyway, in 4th position in the championship, a little bit further down, is Fabio Grigoletto, who got his first podium at Sebring. He's been always there and thereabouts on the front row of the grid, and fantastic qualifier. Now starting to get together in the races as well is the Italian in the 311 Cadillac. In 5th in the points is Mario Tump in the Porsche Penske, ahead of his usual Blackhawk Racing teammate Mark Veit, who's on 23 points. Then in 7th, it's Frenchman Aurelien Bru, who was 4th at Sebring on 21 points. In 8th is David Levy, who finished in the top 4 at Interlagos as well. He's on 18 points. Then we have Jules Neal in 9th on 15 points. And the top 10 is rounded out by Italy's Amos Lorito. And in 11th, we've got Marco Di Buono in the Ferrari, who, of course, has had some good performances throughout the season. The results haven't quite come together just yet. Bert Knops, who's a regular fixture in the top 10, the Dutchman, in 12th. Julian Gurin in the 83 Ferraris on 4 points in 13th. Daniele Farinelli is 14th. Gaetan Quidel is 15th. Then it's Clement Gugord in 16th. And Kakpa Mariansky yet to get off the scoring board in 17th and last in the 99 Porsche. LMGD3 has Kieran Prendergast at the top of the table, despite being yet to win a race. He's always on the podium, inevitably taking that runners-up spot after a fantastic recovery drive, most recently seen in Sebring. The winner in Sebring, though, of course, was Arda Ercan, who's on 43 points after crashing out in the first endurance race of the season at Spa. He's really started to get things together, and he'll be looking to put things right here at Le Mans. Matteo Blotto, winner in Interlagos, he's in third, 3 points down on Ercan. Then it's Kamal Nari, our Spa winner, who leads, of course, the endurance champion part of the championship as a result, is in fourth on 39 points. Then it's Sebastian Wunsch, fifth on 36 points, with very, very similar McLarens. Fabian Ballet is sixth on 32 points. Callum Cripps, seventh on 29 points. Regan Mitchell, eighth on 16 points. Michelle Rodriguez is 15th, is on 9 points, 15 points in ninth position, sorry. And then Luca Vingard rounds out the top 10 on 13 points in the BMW. 11th is Erwin Liskowitz on 12 points. Elise Buzito, who was 5th last time at Sebring, finally off the scoring board. He's up to 12th on 10 points. And it's Louis Gaspard, 13th on 6 points. Vatu Maninen, 14th. Alexei Rassi is 15th. Zach Vermack, 16th. Marcus Crawford rounds out the scoreboard after just getting into the top 10 at Sebring on 17th. Then Mika Kimi sadly had to pull out of the championship, so he has got a 0 next to his tally, and it's the same for Ryan Littlemore, who's not had a great deal of luck this season, and indeed for Kakpa Gacio, who's also had to miss a couple of rounds himself then. So GT3 is getting to the end of the pit lane here. It's a slightly different qualifying to usual here at Le Mans. Usually, I think both of the classes would be segmented, but I believe due to the length of the circuit and to save a little bit of time, they're staggering the release essentially rather than waiting for the GT3 qualifying to finish. The Hypercars will be released when the GT3s are about halfway through or near the end of their outlaps essentially.
Yeah, and that's going to add an interesting level of difficulty to this qualifying session. I actually am a little surprised that those in charge of the series didn't decide to put the faster cars out first and let the GT3s out just behind, so that there was at least a couple of clear laps before they'll catch up the speed of these new LMDH cars.
I'm misinformed, sorry, Braden. The classes are separate, and James Huff is just rapidly trying to correct me in the commentator chat. So, because there was a lot of chat beforehand.
Spice to life, yeah.
There was a lot of chat beforehand about potentially doing that, and they decided not to do it in the end. So I wish they hadn't told me about that beforehand now, because it's nice when the series organizers decide to confuse you by throwing about 8 different ideas, and then they decide to do none of them. So, but anyway, at least they know what they're doing. Then there's been more discussions that I wasn't present for, clearly, which tends to be the way in these championships. There's, of course, I don't think there's any new drivers joining the championship for this particular race. As we look at Kieran Prendergast, of course, Prendergast he's of course streaming his own point of view on YouTube and Twitch, I believe. But Prendergast, he's been so impressive this season, but it's been a case of several near misses, isn't it? Of course, Spa, our first endurance race season, he led the vast majority of it until running out of fuel and virtual energy on the final lap, literally a couple of corners from home, which allowed Kamal Nari to steal the win right at the death. Then into Lagos, he's stuck behind Matteo Blotto the whole way through. And then Sebring, of course, because he got a penalty from qualifying carried over from Interlagos, where he did an extra lap after the checkered flag fell. And that meant he had to miss the opening half of qualifying, 5 minutes stuck in the pits. By the time he got out in Sebring, the rain started to fall, and he started 12th on the grid, but brilliantly fought his way up to second behind Arda Ercan come the checkered flag then, as we now ride on board with the Ferrari of Seb Wunsch, another podium finisher this season. But yeah, Prendergast, he's still got something to prove, and we know he really loves tracks like Sebring and Le Mans. They definitely play to his strengths, these classic endurance tracks. And it'll be interesting to see how that McLaren fares in terms of straight line speed relative to your BMWs and your Ferraris that you would expect to be sort of the front runners in GT3 here at Le Mans.
Yeah, and even though we've had 3 winners in 3 rounds so far in the GT3 category, do not underestimate the really dominant performances that Kieran Prendergast has put out so far in the season. He has been nothing short of amazing and a step above the field, and I certainly would not be surprised to see him go out and win one or two or even three of the upcoming rounds. We look now at Elise Bazita in the Corvette Racing. This is, I believe, one of the TF Sport cars, so not your typical Pratt and Miller outfit that you would expect to see racing in IMSA over in the United States, but rather the still kind of similarly colored yellow and black paint scheme. Bazita with one of their best uh, performances last time out in Sebring, and that has certainly been a highlight for them. But we talk about the GT3 category and dominance of Kieran Prendergast. Really, the dominance has been more on the manufacturer side. We've not seen the Corvettes and the BMWs do much at all in the way of challenging for very many points. It's really been dominated at the front of the field by the Ferraris and by the McLarens.
Yeah, certainly Buzita and Luca Fingard in the BMW as well have had some standout sort of underdog performances in the Corvette and the BMW M3 respectively. But yeah, it has all really been about those McLaren 720S and Ferrari 488 drivers, hasn't it? Because they seem to just hook those cars up a little bit more consistently than some of the less fancied manufacturer drivers, essentially. But certainly Buzita, despite having that massive US flag, is of course a Canadian driver. So there's of course the thing with those default real life liveries you sort of got to make do essentially, and often leads to us getting a bit confused with drivers running pretty much identical liveries, especially in the GT3 class where there are so many Ferraris. I've lost count of the number of drivers that use the 54 or the 86 Ferrari. There's so many that just pick the same number, so it is going to be a little bit of a blur as we go. But luckily, Le Mans, plenty of long straights as we see Ryan Littlemore going down the Mulsanne straight. And I think Littlemore is going to be the first to set a flying lap here. And as he goes, sets a 38.0 in the first sector, of course. And he's just going into the first chicane here at the end of the, in the middle of the Mulsanne straight here. A little bit of a twitch as he tries to get on the power there. And of course, with these long straights, there's going to be a lot of slipstreaming in the race, but it gives you a lot of time to sort of focus on the breaking point for the next chicane or the Mulsanne corner, which is, of course, at the very, very end of this sort of long back straight. These chicanes were, of course, added in the early 90s or late 80s, essentially, to try and slow all the prototypes down. And it's interesting, it's only really in the last couple of years that in Hypercar, or what it used to be called LMP1, that we started to see the overall lap record start to be broken again, essentially. So it's really interesting. Of course, Le Mans got such a long history that it started off as being this sort of ultimate test for road cars, essentially. And as prototypes have developed, it's become well, the same spirit is there, but the event itself is a very, very different kettle of fish to what it used to be.
Yeah, no doubt. And we've talked again about the difference in the strengths of each of the manufacturers so far this season. I think this is going to be a big opportunity for big points for the Corvettes and for the BMWs. They certainly, the first few rounds have been much more focused on the agility of these cars, but now horsepower is going to be much more a factor going down that long Mulsanne straight, kind of divided into thirds in a way by those chicanes that you've just mentioned. And Kieran Prendergast, unsurprisingly, sets the first two purple sectors, and I expect him to hold that time for quite a while. I would not be in any way surprised to see him sit on the pole, but in terms of the championship, he's also set himself apart in the overall standings. Of course, heartbreak at the first round in Spa, our first endurance round, leaves him a little further down the order than in the overall championship, but he is still very much right on top of things in the overall and sprint standings. Ryan Littlemore, very kindly to us at least, has chosen the number 66 JMW Motorsport Ferrari, so a little bit of variety in the Ferrari liveries. The only driver that we've seen so far this season select that particular paint scheme for the 296 GT3, going now through the Porsche S's. And quite a bit of countersteer needed there, trying to just balance the aerodynamic and mechanical grip of that Ferrari. You can see the aerodynamic vents over the top of the wheel arches, allowing some high pressure air out from above those tires to reduce the drag and increase the downforce of the vehicle through the final S's, and we'll see how he comes across to set what will be the benchmark for the rest of this session.
Indeed, then, so a little more power towards the line at that final chicane, and certainly you're going to see, particularly in the Hypercars, they come in with much higher speeds and have to brake all of a sudden. You're going to see a little bit more wheel lifting there. But Regan Mitchell, of course, second across the line, goes second fastest, 6 tenths slower than Kent Pagacio, I think, is actually the first to set a lap time there. So I would suggest maybe that Littlemore may have had an invalid lap there, as Kieran Prendergast is actually beaten in the middle sector, but by far the fastest in the first and last sectors. There we go, 3:59.2, the first of our GT3s to break the 4-minute barrier then. And that is very, very encouraging for the British driver. Lots of support, as expected, for Kieran Prendergast in the YouTube chat from not only his dad, but also Dalibor Bogojevic, who says, go, 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 big printer. He also says, VMS is the only reason why I'm live with you guys. You are great commentators on this stream. Great work. So thank you very much, Dalibor. Praise indeed for our work.
Well, thank you.
I also saw Stefano Senina Amsterdam says, Blotto pole. James Huff replies, Blotto's not driving today. Stefano then changes his mind, says, Kamal then. So Kamal, rapidly switching allegiances to Kamal Nari. But of course, Kamal Nari, I alluded to this a little bit earlier, because he won, of course, in Spa. He's leading the endurance championship, and there is a separate sort of prize pot for our free endurance rounds, our sprint rounds, and the sort of overall championship as well. So while Kamal Nari retired from both the sprint rounds in Brazil and in Sebring due to accidents, he is still leading the actual endurance round over Kieran Prendergast, of course. So there might be a little bit of a reset there, although now he is not in the first group that's set lap times here. So only 9 cars have set laps all the way through the the 8-mile circuit, essentially, haven't they?
Yeah, and a good point made about a little more coming across the line first, but not having set a lap time. Something the stewards have informed us of is that the track limits are going to be very strict here around the Circuit of the South. So that is going to add another challenge for these drivers, is to not have too many off-track penalties and end up with a drive-through. But even in qualifying here, where I reckon this track position is going to be particularly important, being up towards the front of the field opens up your strategy a little bit, hopefully keeps you out of any potential incidents, which I'm sure there will be no shortage of contact down these long straightaways and the corners, no less, as we take a look at Seb Wunsch coming around after having set a purple first sector, and is now targeting to overtake a 3:59.040. That is the benchmark currently set by himself.
Yeah.
Yes, so trying to improve over himself and open the gap up to Kieran Prendergast, who again has been almost untouchable in just raw pace so far this season. Michelle Rodriguez for the United Autosports number 59 is putting on a strong showing with a fastest middle sector here, and nothing to shake a stick at with this lap thus far. We'll see where that lands him on the grid.
Yes, and I think checkered flag is definitely out here at Circuit de la South, so the Hypercars are waiting to be released, but the GT3's just finishing their final runs there, and Michelle Rodriguez, of course, who's always been there or thereabouts in the top 10, has had some solid performances, but has yet to really launch himself to the front of the field. This is looking like a very, very tidy lap so far as he goes through the back end of the circuit, through the S's, into Maison Blanche, as he gets a big tank slapper actually there, and just about is able to arrest the slide then. And now towards the forward curves, the final chicanes, with the pit lane exit entry sort of on the outside there. So it could be interesting come the race, come the pit strategy is coming into play. People are going to be launching off into there to get fuel and fresh tires. But Michelle Rodriguez towards the line goes third fastest there, second off of Wunsch's provisional pole time. But Prendergast is going even quicker in the middle sector. This could be a good enough lap to launch himself into pole position. He just about avoids the gravel there at the final corner, and it is once more into provisional pole, 3:58.7. That was a great lap, Braden.
Yeah, fantastic showing from Kieran Prendergast. A few other cars still on track, but Valtteri Männinen, among others, are not improving on their laps. They're going to go ahead and just call it their Callum Cripps. So too will make his way into the pit lane, finishing the lap here. Sebastian Wunsch. Can
Oh,
Wunsch improve on the time? It looks like he's going to be able to, but we won't know until he comes across the line. Can he improve enough to retake that pole from Prendergast? Yes, he's got it. 358.156, 6/10 of a second faster than Kieran Prendergast, and I think we're shaping up for a very strong battle at the front of the field between this Ferrari and the Inception McLaren.
yeah. So Seb Wunsch, of course, has taken a couple of podiums so far this season, but he's another driver that's yet to take victory, down in fifth in the standings then, and yeah, he certainly had a really, really unlucky time at Interlagos, the sprint race there, where he had an incident with Prendergast, funnily enough, that ended with him making contact with Arda Ercan that sent Seb Wunsch into the wall. And then, of course, Sebring, he finished a little bit distant in the end compared to Ercan and Prendergast down behind Matteo Blotto in fourth then. So great to see him return to form, take his first pole position, and by 6/10 as well. Prendergast certainly would not have seen that one coming as our Hypercars all come out the pits at exactly the same time there. They really don't want to waste any time at all. And they've got 10 minutes left then to see which of them is going to start on pole position. We're great to see Jene Simičić returning to the fold after his absence. There's Davin Marocek as well. And of course, we've got Michi Hoy. Those are going to be our three front runners in the championship, all looking to outdo each other in the BMWs and Lamborghinis as well, respectively.
Yeah, and this is going to be an interesting aspect of the session, which is, do you want to lead or do you want to follow? Obviously, being that first car in line means you get the best of the air for the aerodynamics on the front and rear of these very slippery GTP or LMDH, LMH cars, whatever you'd like to call them. But down the straightaways, you're not going to want to be the person punching a hole in the air for everybody else behind you. So I expect to see a little bit of strategy here back and forth between drivers trying to get a toe down the Mulsanne straight versus those who want to make as much time through somewhere like the Porsche curves, where you're very much relying on that aerodynamic grip to hold the car into the black tarmac. Is Arlene Brew going to be the first out on track in the number 3 Cadillac Racing V Series hybrid? So he will bring that out on track, followed not far behind by Davin Marocek, who we've seen really start to blossom. We saw some flavors of speed from him early on in the season at Spa, but certainly has established himself as a legitimate contender for this championship.
Yeah, and Davin Marocek, of course, has taken the last 2 pole positions in a row, didn't he? At Interlagos, where there was that crazy finish with Jene Simičić in the race itself, and at Sebring, where ultimately it was a mistake in the pits, essentially, where Marocek had a very, very long pit stop where I think he just missed the box, and that allowed Michi Hoyer, who was quicker in the pits, to sort of come out in the lead, and he was able to hold on to that and sort of ended up backing Fabio Grigoletto into Davin Marocek, and the two of them just had an absolutely hammer and tongs battle for second position, which ended in favor of Marocek. And you see the Hypercars starting to weave. We saw this at Spa as well, especially in the BMWs at the very, very start of the race. Hoyer and Simičić were trying to weave to build up tire temperature early on. So that could be a little bit of a weakness here in qualifying, although one thing that may play the advantage is with such a long lap here, those big straights give plenty of opportunities to warm up the tires on the out lap, unlike a much shorter circuit like, say, Interlagos or even Sebring. That was a much more of an Achilles heel for the BMWs in particular, but it will affect, of course, all the Hypercars to an extent here, because the tire's going to cool down such are the lengths of the straight by the time they get to the braking zone effectively. You want to keep those brakes in operating optimal working range as well, for that matter.
Yeah, the delta between the hottest these brakes get and the coldest these brakes get, between the very, very short, tight corners that the circuit has to display, but as well as the famous long straights, makes it so that the tires and the brakes, all aspects of these cars, are going to be tested and pushed to the absolute limits of reliability. We saw overheating issues for the Cadillacs at Interlagos, which added quite an aspect of interesting strategy with the Cadillacs trying to keep those engines from overheating. A couple of them ended up expiring. I believe one of them, in fact, was who we're looking at now, Orlane Brew, who may have lost his engine in unfortunate circumstances around Interlagos. But we now look on board with Devin Marokchek as he heads into the Porsche curves. Very, very fast for these cars. Almost a blink of the eye, a blink and you miss it, and they're already through the Porsche curves in 5th gear, which seems absolutely absurd for anyone who has spent any time driving around this circuit. Just incredible speed that these Le Mans Hypercars and LMDH cars have to offer.
Yeah, it is quite the sight to behold, and it also still, even with all that downforce, takes a lot of bravery. Just have the confidence that the car will grip, and remember, with straight line speed being so important, especially come the race, the drivers will have slightly twitchy. It's a little bit like watching a Formula One car at Monza, effectively, where they trim out the rear wing to reduce drag as much as possible. But come the corners, there, you got to hope that the mechanical grip is going to get you through. Then, as Davin Rochek goes through the opening chicane and under the Dunlop Bridge then to start the lap in that Lamborghini. Of course, they're not going to get too many attempts here. Look, 8 minutes left on the clock then. 6, sorry. It's the 6 looks like an 8 when there's lots of bright white sky in the background covering up. 32-0 in the first sector for Marokchik then as he begins the long climb into 7th gear, over 300 kilometers per hour now, and it's only going to build and build before that first chicane then. Marokchik, of course, second in the championship with Jene Simčić returning. He cannot afford to leave any time on the table here. Those BMWs are surely going to be the main opposition today, but let's not forget about the likes of Fabio Grigoletto in the Cadillac, or Amos Lorito as well, who's shown some good form as of late as well. And there's Marco Di Buono in the Ferrari. We expect the Ferrari as well to be extremely well suited, as it is in real life, to the demands of Circuit de la Sarthe. And that's a very, very good first sector, 31.9 as he goes out of Tetra Rouge.
Yeah, and nearly 335 kilometers an hour as they approached the first of the Mulsanne chicanes, and honestly quite comparable to the previous generation LMP1 cars that became so prolific for their performance around Le Mans. The speed, again, so easy to underestimate and undersell the speed of these LMDH and LMH cars, and you could see using every single inch of the circuit available. If I paid for this game, I'm going to use every single inch of circuit that is available to me. Of course, they're going to have to be quite careful with those track limits as we ride now on board with our championship leader, Michi Hoyer, who took advantage of the absence of Jene Simčić one or 2 weeks ago, and now has overtaken him in the championship. That battle between the two BMW drivers is going to be interesting to watch as we see a bit of a moment by Michi Hoyer in the BMW M Team WRT car, the non-art car. So if you're looking to tell between the two of those, the art car, that is Jene Simčić, our favorite pole sister from our first round at Spa, and Michi Hoyer is in the standard BMW Team WRT livery as he heads very rapidly down through gears, all the way down to first gear even, through that corner and up through fourth already. So quite a lot of gear changes around this circuit, and these drivers are going to be wanting every ounce of performance they can possibly get out of the cars.
Yeah, it was a Mulsanne corner there where Michi Hoyer had to have a couple of goes turning it in, but the German was able to do so, as the Aurelien Bru getting well over the curb as he heads through the Virage Corvette into Maison Blanche there. And he's going to be the first of all. He was first at the end of the pit lane, wasn't he? And he's going to be first to set a flying lap here in that number 3 Cadillac, of course. So at the final corner he comes. What is our first time on the board going to be? It's going to be a 3:23.7 then. And you see Davin Rochek is surely on course to beat that then. You're going to see much bigger gaps than normal. 3:23.0, 7/10 clear of Aurelien Bru. And Marco Di Buono, oh, he's been beaten in the middle sector, but he is faster than Rochek still in the first. It's only good enough for second though, nearly half a second off. So that really shows you the job that Marokchik's done here. But Simčić is going to be the one to watch, Braden. Here he comes through those last few chicanes.
Yeah, and 10 thousandths of a second he was faster in that center sector, but almost half a second slow in the first sector. I'm sure he's still getting those tires warm with 2.5 minutes remaining. I reckon they might be able to just get one lap each remaining, so still we'll see the checkered flag and another almost tenth and a half or so in the final sector. Yannick Semicic was able to squeeze out of that BMW. Still not enough for the pole, but very well and truly in second position, a full tenth and almost a half between himself and Marco De Buono. As we look now at Burton Knops, who we saw a great performance out of a couple of weeks ago at Sebring. Very, very good to see him getting some points on the board. Marco De Buono, though, has now put another purple first sector down, so that Ferrari is certainly plenty quick, currently scored in the third position.
Yeah, De Bruyne's he's been threatening to do this for a lot of this season, hasn't he? He had a really good run in Sebring up until it rained, and sadly he lost control and crashed and had to pit for lengthy repairs. But the pace has always been there, and that Ferrari's just been a little bit unlucky with incident. A couple of moves, like Interlagos, he made a move that didn't quite go his way as well. But Le Mans, this is going to be one of his best opportunities of the season to really put the cat among the pigeons and start to worry our championship contenders then. And Yannick Semicic, of course, will be desperate to get that a little bit closer to Davin Rokchik to once again resume his title as the pole sister. Michi Hoyer is going, even quicker, though, in that first sector, to the point that he's actually not far behind De Buono on the road. He's going to be hoping he doesn't get too held up here. De Buono has to abandon his lap for whatever reason, but luckily there's at least 6 or 7 seconds between them. Then middle sector, personal best, but 3/10 off Morocchek then. So Michi Hoyer is sort of neck and neck right now with Yannick Semicic, as Morocchek not improving in that middle sector, but it's close. It's very, very close. De Buono, it's going to be very, very interesting to see if he can get in front of Semicic here.
Yeah, and you could see just how hard these drivers are pushing, and little mistakes costing them time. Again, as you mentioned, Morocchek a little bit slower than his previous attempt in the middle sector, not by much, only about 0.139 of a second, but that still is significant on the scale of time for how close these cars are together. But interestingly enough, it doesn't seem like any of them are really close enough to get a tow from one another, an aerodynamic tow from one another down the straightaway. So they've actually kind of policed themselves and spread out as much as they need to make sure that everyone has more than enough room. As you can see, the left front tire just almost wanting to leave the tarmac from the 19 car, with all the loads shifting it, pushing the force of the car to the right hand side. And Morocchek's going to abandon this lap. I think he's just going to sit on that 323.046. Marco De Buono going to try and come around. He's got another attempt here. He's going to stay in the lap. For a second, it almost looked like he was going to pull off into the pit lane there, but he's going to go ahead and finish it. He had a faster first sector, improved in the second. Is he going to be fast enough to improve? Up to fourth, so that'll get him ahead of Yannick Semicic for the time being, as Fabio Grigoletto goes around with a very strong time, only 64 thousandths off of Davin Morocchek, so very, very strong one.
Hoyer right in between Morocchek and Grigoletto, 27 thousandths off a pole position. It really doesn't get much closer than that. Fantastic effort from Michi Hoyer, but Semicic beats them all. Fabulous final sector from Yannick Semicic, almost 6/10 clear of Davin Morocchek, and Morocchek's gonna rue making that tiny mistake on his final run that he abandoned. Gaetan Quidel also launches himself up to 7th between the two Ferraris of De Buono and Julian Gurin there. So fantastic final effort there. Can Clement Gagoud improve? Yes, to 9th position ahead of Bert Knops there. But look at the field spread, 3.5 seconds with looks like Levy, Lorito, Neal and Mariansky in the pits, so they didn't get to set a time at all. They messed up both of their 2 laps then. But Yannick Semicic, Braden, it's pole sister time. We can say it again, just like at Spa. It's Yannick Semicic coming on top at the start and have the best seat in the house, really, for the start of our endurance round here at Le Mans.
Yeah, the strategy is going to be ever so important, but Yannick Semicic is going to take home the pole sister role, and Davin Morocchek going to be on the outside of that lane. Michi Hoyer in 3rd position, followed by Fabio Grigoletto. Not far behind in row 3, Orlane Brou and Marco De Buono. Not quite as good of a qualifying effort as De Buono would have hoped for, but Gaetan Quidel and Julian Guerin will start in the row behind the number 83 Ferrari, another of our Ferraris with a bit stronger of a result than they're used to. Clement Gagoud in the 9th position, followed by Bert Knops, our almost perennial top 10 qualifier. Daniele Farinelli, in 11th, followed by, I don't know, that went way too quick. And I'll hand over to you for the GT3s.
Okay, Prendergast and Michelle Rodriguez on the front row. His best qualifying this season so far. Urban Liskevitz on row 8 with Capagacia for good company in the BMW. Then it's Callum Cripps on row 9 with Elise Buzita, the Canadian, in the Corvette. In that top 6 then in class, Regan Mitchell and Marcus Crawford make up row 10. Marcus Crawford on a high at the moment. His best qualifying this season so far. Valtteri Manninen makes up row 11. David Levy didn't get a lap together, so hopefully he'll get to start at the very, very back of the field along with Amos Lorito and Jules Neal. Big shocks there that Neal and Lorito could not get the laps together, with Louis Gaspar and Ryan Littlemore suffering the same fate. Along with Fabian Ballet and Kappa Mariansky, of course. Can I do the first lap? Because the race
Yes, that is going to be our starting lineup around Le Mans. Just a couple of minutes' time, we'll bring you along with us for the start of the race. And we do apologize if there's a little bit of stuttering. It's quite a big track, and Nick's computer is not quite making friends with it. But quite an exciting session that we've just seen. You see a reset of the marbles along the pit lane there and a little bit of change of day. That changing condition is going to make things ever more complicated for our drivers as they anxiously await getting back to racing. It's been a couple of weeks since they've all been able to sit down on the loud pedal in this series in Le Mans Ultimate and go to battle with one another. But at this point in the season, you start to develop relationships, to develop rapport with these other drivers, and that's going to make it ever easier to pull off crazy moves that we as spectators love to see as they decide who they can and can't trust, who they can and can't race side by side with. And that certainly is going to be important today. Figure out who you can work with, who you can almost strategize to work together alongside. Devin Moravcik kind of on his own in the Lamborghini, but a couple of BMWs, a whole lot of Cadillacs out in the field, and a pair or so of Porsches. Granted, they're not officially teammates, or not teammates in any official capacity, but you'll certainly be a little comforted to see someone with the same badge on the front end of their cars alongside you. And if you're in the GT3 class, that's really just the rest of the class, because the majority of them truly are for the most part just McLarens and Ferraris. Kieran Prendergast not able to take home the pole. He was just short under Seb Wunsch, but is certainly going to be somebody we need to look at throughout this entire race. But what a storyline it would be if he still comes up empty this week. Seb Wunsch would be the fourth different winner. Of course, so too would Kieran if he went and took home the checkered flag today. But in the meantime, it's Jernej Simoncic going to try to reestablish himself at the top of this field after a week off in the European Sim Racing Championships. He wasn't able to quite get back home, though the likes of Michi Hoyer were, and that has given them advantage in the championship. So again, in that second row in the number 15 car, that is your championship leader. Not far behind him is the 19 car on the outside of row 1, that bright green Lamborghini, but it's Jernej Simoncic, who prior to the round at Sebring was our leader and generally has been the most dominant force throughout the seasons thus far. You can see them all lined up, trying to warm up the tires a little bit as Michi Hoyer, and following suit are some cars behind. You could even see three number 3 gold Cadillacs all in a row on that inside row behind our pole sitter. And Jernej Simoncic is going to try to pull us away.
Yeah, and Jernej Simoncic, let's not forget, a pole sitter at the virtual 24 Hours of Le Mans in the past, so he's had a lot of success here. The BMW is getting ready then. Davin Rutchuk right behind him. Our 2.4 Hours of Le Mans are about to get going here in VMS Pro. We are underway here at Le Mans then, and a load of our Hypercars at the back trying to clear the duty-free field. Simoncic leads them away. Moravcik is tucked right in, and Grigoletto is right alongside Michi Hoyer then as they go into the Dunlop chicane for the first time. Everyone tries to survive, and Grigoletto's round!
Grigoletto's around!
Oh dear, that's a disaster for Fabio Grigoletto. He has to let the whole of the duty-free pack through, but Moravcik now has got clear air behind him, and he's got Jernej Simoncic all to himself then, as they're about to start that long run on the Mulsanne straight here after Tetra Rouge.
Yeah, chaos at the start of the race through the first chicane, but that allows our top two, Jernej Simoncic and Devin Moravcik, to run away a little bit from the field. Marco De Bono, a strong start, finds himself now in the third position. He's overtaken Michi Hoyer, and of course, Fabio Grigoletto, who we saw spinning there, he's going to be rapidly trying to make his way back through the GT3 field as quick as he can to try to stay in touch with our leaders. And it looks like Moravcik just overdrives the first of the chicanes down the straight. And now we have, is that Gaten Quidel? Quidel is off the track and has skipped that first chicane. He's going to have to give up some of the time gained, though. I suspect he will not have gained much going through the gravel as opposed to that nice sticky asphalt.
Lost 2 positions. Gurgord and Knops getting past, and Gurin reasserting that 6th position as well. De Bruno, though, didn't lose quite as much as I thought with having to avoid Grigoletto spinning in front of him. So De Bruno and Hoyer, I think, could very well close back up to the rear of Davin Rochek and get in this fight for victory. Meanwhile, in GD3, Seb Bunch has maintained the lead from Kieran Prendergast, and Bunch was actually trying to hold up some of the hypercars, but the big battle is right behind here. You can see Regan Mitchell, Michelle Rodriguez side by side. Rodriguez didn't quite have the start they needed. Oh, the bollard is thrown into the air there by the GD3 pack, and everyone sort of swerves to avoid it there. They don't want the physics engine to do anything crazy on this first lap there, but Rodriguez losing an up position to Regan Mitchell, who seems very, very fired up, and you see is that Buzita trying to make a move in the background on 2 of the Ferraris then that he's fighting to try and get back into the top 7 then.
Yeah, and the stewards are certainly going to have a look at that race start through the first chicane where we saw chewed up and spat out was Fabio Grigoletto. Finds himself, oh, there's contact. That's Ryan Littlemore that's gone around. Yeah, just maybe caught a little bit of the gravel on the outside and has collected Elise Bazita along with him. Hopefully not much damage to those cars, but that is a big moment for Ryan Littlemore. Looked like he maybe just caught the gravel in the left front of that Ferrari 296 GT3, and that sends him around and collects Elise Bazita, who was just a complete bystander in all that. Meanwhile, in the hypercar class, Julian Guerin is trying to put pressure on Clement Grigod, so the 2 French drivers going at it in the, that's the Cadillac leading the Ferrari there through the Porsche curves, and they are going to stay line astern for the moment. Not able to make any sort of move when you can see almost the 83 sliding around a little bit more or less clean aerodynamic air on the front end of that car. It goes to show just how difficult it could be to follow another car so closely through those Porsche curves.
Yeah, this has been Gurgurd's one of his best showings of the season so far in the top 6 there. He's had some strong starts to races. Another French drivers from, I think he's from the either the G League Esports and one of the other French outfits that competes here in VMS Pro. But yeah, very, very competitive. Great to see him in the top 6 as we complete the first lap. There he says a yellow flag in the final sector somewhere. But Jernej Simoncic still leading by 6/10 then ahead of Marco De Bruno. Oh, and it's Valtteri Maninen that's out of the race. He's come off into the wall, coming out of the S's, out of the Porsche curves there, and that is disastrous there for one of our Corvette runners there, Valtteri Maninen. And I think that's he's going to be his 3rd non-score in a row, or 2nd non-score in a row, certainly because he didn't score at Sebring either. And that's a big shame. It doesn't look like anybody else was involved in that incident, though.
Yeah, that's tough to see both of the Corvette drivers having trouble early on in the race, but certainly just a microcosm of what has happened throughout this entire championship. Basically, if you don't have a Ferrari, a prancing horse, or a McLaren logo on the front end of your car, you're certainly hard out of luck so far this season. But meanwhile, at the front of the field, it's the BMW continuing to lead over the Lamborghini. These really have been the 2 strongest manufacturers within our hypercar class, and that has made for a little bit more parity. We've seen some flashes of speed from the likes of the Cadillacs and the Ferraris, even the Porsches, but it has certainly been the BMW and the lone Lamborghini that have been dominant at the front of the field. As we see a further battle, Regan Mitchell trying to continue to hold off Michelle Rodriguez in the GT3 class. Goes to the inside now, to the right-hand side, down the Mulsanne straight. Those almost identical-looking McLarens, one with an orange banner above the driver, one with a black banner on that windshield, and that is going to be a pass for position. Regan Mitchell has to give it up to Michelle Rodriguez, but is going to try to get in the tow, I imagine, of that number 59 and try to make the best of the situation. Not far behind, there's a Ferrari trying to hold off another of the McLarens. So the McLaren brigade all really in the same liveries, which makes it extra fun for us up here in the broadcast booth as Louis Gaspar is now going to try to hold off Fabien Ballet, but I think Ballet now is going to be well and truly alongside heading into the next chicane, and I think very wisely Louis Gaspar just kind of slots in behind, not going to try to battle too hard for that, and you can see that Ferrari looks quite a bit to handle. So we move back towards the front of the field. Jernej Simoncic and Devin Moravcik continuing to go at it. Moravcik really has some serious speed, under 0.2 of a second the gap between them. Is he going to try to swing to the outside of this corner, which becomes the inside through the Porsche cars? He's not able to do it. He's going to stay tucked in behind, but it's going to be hard to maintain such a close gap when you're doing these high-speed corners. The aerodynamics that wash off the front of the BMW is going to make it extremely difficult to follow in the Lamborghini. And meanwhile, these two are actually pulling away a bit from Marco De Bono. Michi Hoyer is also going to be not too far away from being a pest in the mirror of Marco De Bono, trying to get back around that Ferrari, who made a pass kind of opportunistically during the chaos of lap 1. We'll have to see what comes of that, and we'll certainly discuss it as we get that information from the race stewards about who was at fault, if anyone there, if it was just a sort of racing incident. Marco De Bono coming to the inside of the track there to almost break the slipstream for Michi Hoyer down the front straightaway, and a very clean line of stern down through the first chicane, the Dunlop chicane, and under the bridge. So the number 50 not under much pressure now from behind, kind of opens up that gap just a tiniest bit from about 0.2 of a second out to half a second, and you can see now the two Frenchmen still going at it. This is Julian Guerin in the number 83 Ferrari, very similarly colored to the gold Cadillac just ahead. We ride on board now down the straightaway, and Clement Grigard going to try to continue to hold on to what is 6th place on the road and overall. Julian Guerin, we've not seen have too terribly fantastic results, but we've seen great flashes of speed. It's just been bad luck and a lot of events that have kind of unfolded outside of Julian Guerin's control that have left him lower in the standings, but now kind of trying to take fate into his own hands here around the Circuit de la Sarthe and trying to pull up behind the Cadillac, but the Cadillac really just has some fantastic straight line speed. The Ferrari here struggling to get up and eclipse the 325 mark. Gonna just about get there before getting off the throttle and onto the brakes for the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. Seems like the Ferrari much better through the corners than that Cadillac. Cadillac with that V8 flat plane front is going to pull away on the straightaway. And meanwhile, we look at Jules Neal, who did not set a qualifying lap, but now is well inside of the lead group here of Hypercars. Behind him, Daniele Farinelli in the other of the Cadillac racing cars. That's the blue one, which is now under pressure from one of the Porsche Penske's, which is that's the number 4 car, so that's David Levy. Of course, we don't have Mark Light here today, who was one of our very quick Porsche Penske drivers, but David Levy continuing to carry the banner for Porsche Penske Motorsport and putting pressure on the Cadillac ahead, but once again, just not having quite that speed down the straightaway. And just as I mentioned it, the speed down the straightaway has brought Gaetan Guidel just up to the back of Bert Knops in the gold Jota Porsche up in front of him. So they are going to be very, very close coming down the straightaway. Let's see if Gaetan Guidel is able to make anything happen, as we see quite a bit of dust kicking up. These drivers absolutely pushing as much as they possibly can, trying to get the best run they possibly can down the straightaway. Meanwhile, Cac Bergassier is trying to hold off Callum Cripps, who has had a strong run up towards the front of the field after not qualifying quite as well as I'm sure he would have liked to, unless that was Gassier actually making a pass there. Looks like the rear end of that McLaren very unsettled the number 59 through the chicane, and is going to actually have a pretty good run heading into the end of the straightaway. Is he going to be able to make anything happen? He's just tucked up underneath the rear wing of the BMW. Is he going to be able to pull out to the right-hand side and try to make a move to the inside? He does so. He's now got the inside, but the BMW deep late on the brakes. You can see them just glowing those brake rotors down the straightaway once again, and that's going to cool them off and leave those almost just cold as a stone by the time they get down to the end of the straightaway. But now Callum Cripps is well and truly alongside, and in fact is almost completed the pass on the straightaway. So some great straight line grunt from the McLaren 720S GT3, and he will clear him before even getting down into the slower corners here. So great straight line speed from Callum Cripps, and that will move him up into the 19th overall position. So very well done there. Great pass, and you can see some dust kicking up in the background, a shot there. Moving back to our hypercar battle, a couple of Porsches going at it. David Levy trying to hold off Kakvar Mariansky, the Proton Competition Porsche. We've seen some strong runs, some strong moments from Mariansky in that number 99 Porsche, but not able to tie it up with a bow and finish off any of those runs. He's going to go to the inside now of Levy, shows the nose, but not able to get all the way alongside, and is going to surrender that track position and put himself back in line, going to try to make another run at it down the straightaway here. It looks like he's actually going to have quite a good run on David Levy, but not able to quite get alongside yet. Looking at the back of the Porsche Penske Motorsport number 4 from the front of the number 99 Proton Competition Porsche. Heading into now the second of the chicanes down Mulsanne. Nothing between them currently. Really, the pace is all on top of each other, but meanwhile, at the top of the field, Simoncic has kind of walked away from Marokchek. 1.3 seconds the gap. That's going to be just about enough to break the toe down the straightaways, and that's going to be a big deal if Marokchek loses that position, that place of strength just behind the BMW. But meanwhile, Marco De Bono is going to be heavily under pressure from Michi Hoyer here. Only 0.2 of a second in closing between the two for the final podium position. The second of the BMW is going to try to make it 1 and 3 for that brand, and is going to go to the outside now.
Ooh.
Marco De Bono making him go around the outside. Is he going to make it stick? He's just about got it. Michi Hoyer going to go through on Marco De Bono, so put the AF Corsa in 4th position. Michi Hoyer going to defend to the inside, and I think he's just about locked that position down.
Yeah, Braden, apologies for not being aware, but that was a fantastic move from Michi Hoyer. Had to really bolt it around the outside into the entry to Indianapolis, which of course became the inside for the actual corner, then had to defend a bit into Arnage as well. But yeah, Marco De Bono was really good down the Mulsanne straight. It really had the sort of higher gear working really, really well on that Ferrari. But in the slipstream and the shorter run down the Courbe du Gaulle, out of the Mulsanne corner, that was really where Hoyer decided to use his virtual energy to strike effectively. As we see Louis Gaspard, trying to get alongside Regan Mitchell coming out the first Mulsanne chicane, and the Ferrari's still going to be alongside the McLaren down the long run, of course. You see just in front, they've got Fabien Ballet that's giving Regan Mitchell in the fellow McLaren a little bit of a toe there, but it is in GT3, it's very much every man for himself, isn't it? So I doubt Fabien Ballet's going to be handing out too many gifts in this battle for 7th position. But in the battle for 8th, it's Gaspard that's got the inside, shows his intentions, gets through past Regan Mitchell there. So Louis Gaspard certainly not taking any prisoners. Regan Mitchell will feel that could have been done maybe with a little bit less contact, but nonetheless, both cars survive and live to fight another day. Sadly, we have lost, and you might have mentioned this already, Braden, Ryan Littlemore, who, of course, does not get to the end of the 3rd lap of the race then. So that's a big shame for our number 66 Ferrari that had that collision with Buzita at the very, very first lap of the race then. But meanwhile, up front, Seb Wunsch pulling a slightly more comfortable 1.5 second gap to Kieran Prendergast, who finds himself just starting to settle in for the long haul here. And this is where all the drivers will start to think to themselves about strategy. Maybe they can double stint the tires at the first stop by not changing them and get them a bit longer into the race. As Le Mans is a circuit where you often see teams try and do that. Everyone is going to try and outthink each other if they can't overtake each other on the road. But meanwhile, in Hypercar, they're all still really, really bunched together from basically 5th onwards, aren't they? So from Aurelien Bru, Gagord have been swapping positions like crazy, and they've got Gurin and Neal in that battle as well. And then this is the other battle a little bit further down, where you see David Levy trying to chase down Farinelli. And then here is Gagord and Gurin, the two Frenchmen with names beginning with G, Julian Guerin, of course, a real-life racer, trying to get that 83 Ferrari, gets a good exit on the outside of the second Mulsanne chicane. Now, down the Courbes de Hunadres towards the Virage de Mulsanne. I apologize to all French speakers, by the way, who have no doubt been horribly offended, but are on the outside, and Julian Guerin is able to sweep through then. Clement Gagord have to sort of back out there. It's all big power slide from Julian Guerin on exit there, and that's going to give a big opportunity for Gagord to get back through by the time they reach Indianapolis.
Yeah, and the Cadillac has had some pretty incredible grunt down the straightaway. It's going to be tucked just underneath the back end of that Ferrari 499P. Meanwhile, further back, the cork in the bottle seems to be Daniele Farinelli, but if you look, the number 311 Cadillac, I believe that's Jules Neal. So the second of the 311 Cadillacs has now made his way up to 8th position after not putting down a qualifying lap and is rapidly catching up to this battle. So this is just about to be a three-way battle between three French drivers around the French circuit, the most famous, I would argue, French circuit in the world, maybe one of the most famous in the world, full stop. Fabio Grigoletto still trying to make time up after that big-time spin in the very first chicane on the very first lap, and has really had a tough go of it trying to make his way back up the field, but has now separated the two Porsches. So the 99 Proton competition now falls off the back of the number 4, who is now under heavy pressure from Fabio Grigoletto. So David Levy is going to be trying desperately to hold off the number 311, who charges back through the field. That's the first time those two Porsches have been separated in quite a bit of time.
Yeah, and Rodriguez, of course, started near the very front of the GT3 pack after that fantastic qualifying performance. Lost a lot of ground at the start, is now trying to fight to make it back up again, with Fabien Ballet well and truly in his sights now that he's gotten clear of Louis Gaspard, who's starting actually to close in behind them as well, come to think of it. I think it's Gaspard has cleared the... I'm trying to remember who is who. It is certainly Gaspard then, who's clear of Regan Mitchell then, but Fabien Ballet, how defensive is he going to get in terms of 7th position here? As you see, there's a battle right in front. That's Kemper Gassier all over the back of Callum Cripps as well. So we've got two GT3 battles happening in close proximity to one another. The two McLarens try to cover off one another. The 59 and the 95 trying to do opposite into the first Mulsanne chicane, and there the positions stay the same, with Rodriguez getting in front of Fabien Ballet. The cars are so similar that I can't tell that a move happened there, Braden, which is never a good sign. But Kemper Gassier is all the back of Callum Cripps, but they're about to go 3 wide in this battle here, just for 12th position then. You see Daniele Farinelli about to have Kemper Mariansky move up the inside. There is Grigoletto making up ground around the outside of Mariansky then. So David Levy well and truly under attack and somehow holding on to 11th position there.
Yeah, that's +1 position for David Levy, who was just not but a couple of moments ago under heavy pressure from Fabio Grigoletto, and now it looks like Farinelli and the Cadillac going to try to fight back to the inside. The blue number 2 Cadillac V-Series R is going to just back out of it heading into the second of the Mulsanne chicanes, but still just kind of bleeding position since qualifying. And meanwhile, at the front of the field, 2 seconds, over 2 seconds, 2.25 even, is the gap between Jernej Simoncic and Davin Marokchek. Perhaps both of them just going to try to settle in here and save a little bit of fuel, and that's going to give them an opportunity to stretch open those pit windows later on in the race. Again, 2 hours and 20 minutes remaining in this race. Marco De Bono is also just keeping in touch with Michi Hoyer. Michi Hoyer obviously has the faster car, but Marco De Bono maybe just trying to stay within the slipstream to try and save as much fuel as possible on board that Ferrari.
Yeah, I was just a bit thrown by something that was being said in the chat. There seems to be a lot of references to a driver known as Only Dans, affectionately, which I believe is what they call Daniele Farinelli. So they're saying, go to see how far Only Dans has come. So I think that's an in-joke that I'm not privy to. But certainly Farinelli right in the heat of that battle with David Levy and Grigoletto. So he's got 2 titans either side of him. As we look at Marco De Buono, Michi Hoyers is not able to shake the Italian in that Ferrari behind him. So all that Ferrari Le Mans performance seems to be keeping Marco De Buono in play here, as we cut to the race leader, Jernej Simoncic, who's just starting to extend that gap ever so slightly to 2.1 seconds over Morocek here. So Morocek starting to look a little bit further in the rearview mirror, but they're starting to catch the back of the GT3 pack. Oh, it's Dan from MSG. Okay, right. I apologize to Daniele Farinelli then. It clearly wasn't anything to do with him whatsoever, as I believe is that Marcus Crawford, I think, that's just being lapped by Jarno Simicic. So the BMW A3 leaves plenty of room for the Hypercar BMW. It is Marcus Crawford indeed, so at least the BMWs are easy to tell apart. But now here comes Davin Morocek who comes through. So luckily the good thing about a Circuit de la Sarthe is there are a lot of places you can be lapped in. They've a lot of experience of endurance racing. Everybody knows the best place to let all the faster classes through, essentially. And now it's going to be Michi Hoyer and Marco de Buono's turn through the fast right-hander that is Tetra Rouge.
Yeah, and don't look now, but Julian Guerin has very much secured that 6th position over Grigod. That gap has now opened up to approaching a full second. That means he can turn his attention forward to the 3.1 second gap that Brew has over him. So going to have to try to claw up to the 5th position. I think both Ferraris are going to have a strong day today, just looking at the outright speed that they've both had so far. Maybe not quite as good as Jarno Simicic. Our pole sister has shown why he owns the title very nearly a moment there. Gaten Quintel very nearly wiped out Bert Knops and now has put himself in a position where he's going to be vulnerable to the number 4, David Levy behind, who has had a much stronger run through the first chicane, but that V8, that Cadillac V-Series V8 is continuing to be a saving grace for him, as Kakper Mariansky going to go to the inside of Daniele Farinelli, who has been just bleeding position since the start of the race, so certainly hoping to start moving that momentum the other way. They're going to go side by side. The Proton competition number 99 just gets cut off by Daniele Farinelli, and meanwhile there's a great battle in GT3s, and this is going to be interesting when we see our Hypercar leaders start to get through. See, actually, just off in the distance, Simicic and Morocek have both already gotten by them, so the top 4, maybe 5, are all going to get past them on the straight, but it's going to be, oh, somebody's big time off. Who's that's off in the background?
Oh, I didn't quite see Braden, but they certainly got Mulsanne Corner very wrong indeed and decided to throw up gravel in the face of everybody else. Meanwhile, you saw Rodriguez and Ballet still fighting out for what I believe with Luca Vingard is like a top 5, top 6 in class, if memory serves correctly, but it may well not be. But anyway, now it's Guerin and Gugor trying to negotiate this as Grigoletto continues the battle, and he's not only passed Farinelli, but also now David Levy into Indianapolis. And so Grigoletto, that pace that he's got on board, he may not have had the ideal start to this race, but he's starting to fight back now, much like we saw Jules Neal in the other Cadillac do as well. So it's really the Cadillacs that are on the fight back through the Hypercar field and trying to take advantage of all the GT3 traffic around them. Then Morocek has closed in on Simicic, interestingly, to under a second now. So Simicic clearly starting to come up to the Porsche curves where it's a little bit difficult to get past the GT3 traffic as you ride on board with the 311, and you can see some of the Hypercars in front really struggling through the Porsche curves to just not lock up brakes and find a way through the traffic.
Yeah, this is just about the worst place you can catch traffic, and it's only going to get worse as this endurance event goes on. 2 hours and 15 minutes remaining, and the marbles are going to shed off of those Michelin tires. There's going to be just rubber everywhere offline through the Porsche curves before you know it, and that is going to become ever more difficult of a passing zone around these slower GT3 cars, but they're going to be very fortunate to catch a long line of them here down the main straightaway, and that's going to give them an opportunity to get through a little bit more scot-free. But Fabio Grigoletto just flashing the lights, making his presence known. I think he might just about get stuck behind the BMW. Yes, he does. The red and white BMW going to hold him up. He's going to lose the back of the sister Cadillac number 3 in the gold color just ahead. So he is going to end up a little bit stuck. So too has Kakper Mariansky in the number 99 Proton competition, has lost touch a little bit with that front group. As you can see, the BMW really trying to get out of the way. That's quite an impressive and very cordial move to just leave the circuit very kindly for our passing GTPs, or passing Hypercars.
Yeah, lucky you got back in front time before the rest of his immediate threat in the GT3, those competitors there were able to jump him there. But it seems this group, now that Grigoletto has left, the battle has just continued between Levy, Mariansky, and then Farinelli in the middle here. And of course, you've got Gaten Quidel, who's still right in front of Grigoletto, who seems to have been struggling with that Mulsanne chicane all day, hasn't he? And trying to really just stay out of trouble and stop hemorrhaging positions outside of the top 7 here. But we now see Rigoletto on the move again, and Quidel being really held up actually by is that the 54 Ferrari, I think, just ahead of them, that is trying not to get involved. I think that may be Liskowitz then. Yes, it is Liskowitz then, running third in class behind Prendergast and Wunsch, our class leader then, who's about to be lapped before too long by our Hypercars here. And now Grigoletto senses an opportunity. Quidel immediately goes to the inside to defend, and Kieran Prendergast has this all going on right behind him. Needs to make sure he doesn't get too flustered here. Quidel doesn't have a great exit, was trying to avoid hitting the back of the McLaren there, and then Fabio Grigoletto can smell blood in the water out of the fellow Cadillac here. Which Cadillac's going to get to Indianapolis first? Is it the 311 in red or the golden yellow Cadillac of Quidel that's going to do it? Seb Wunsch in front of them. Quidel round the outside. Grigoletto joins him. They arrive in Indianapolis together. It's Grigoletto that's got the inside, and he makes another move, and he's into the top 10 there. Fantastic fight back from the Italian. So then we now cut to David Levy, who's got Daniele Farinelli for close companies. They clearly 86 Ferrari as Seb Wunsch then, and Mariansky is close in tow then. This, the battle for 12th position in class. David Levy has been fighting fires up and down just outside the top 10 here, but the Porsche not making quite the progress I think he would really have wanted. And Farinelli, the Cadillac's clearly working much stronger than I think some have had expected after qualifying, especially with Grigoletto's spin. We didn't see a Cadillac in the top 4, but now there might be a chance to use some clever strategy to get back in the game. Still 2 hours, 12 minutes left on the clock then. So we are pretty much half an hour into this one as Mariansky considers a move into the forward chicane on Daniele Farinelli, but Farinelli is not going to leave the door open too widely, but he does get a little bit onto the gravel, just touches the gravel out of the final corner just as they start another lap. And now Mariansky is going to sense an opportunity, potentially coming out of Tetra Rouge then, or maybe even into the Dunlop chicane then as they approach the bridge once again. And the number 99, the Polish driver at the wheel, who has yet to really have some major results so far this season, did at least finish fairly strongly at Sebring, just around about the top 10, did Kacper Mariansky. So, I know, in fact, he's yet to get a point on the board as Mariansky, so he really needs to finish this one. So I falsely remembered the results of Sebring there. But anyway, we now ride on board with Grigoletto. Having dispensed with Gaten Quidel, his next target is the ever-reliable Burton Ops from the Sim Racer Holland team. Burton Ops, of course, was competing for that team yesterday in a VEC at Road America, the 6 Hours of Road America, which started with an almighty crash. And funnily enough, it was the Rafa Esports car of Jesper Petersen and Jonas Simic that somehow avoided all the chaos, went from 4th to the lead in GT3 and then never lost the lead basically until the end of the 6 hours then. But Burton Ops was another driver that impressed in that race, got the Sim Racing for Holland car home in the top 4 in class. Breaks very, very early for the second Mulsanne chicane, but gets on the power a little bit earlier too. As a result, Fabio Grigoletto starting to close in on that Joda Porsche here and put it under pressure. And this has been a really, really impressive fight back from Grigoletto. He's clawed through these Hypercars in no time at all, and into the Mulsanne corner. He's gearing up for a move, Braden.
Yeah, and Grigoletto with an almighty challenge ahead of him. He's now made his way past Burton Ops, the number 38. That puts him in the 9th position, but he still has a long way to go if he wants to make up all the positions he lost at the very start of the race. Continuing to see a line of cars in the background there, a little bit of almost a half a tank slapper there on one of the number 3 gold Cadillacs, and the field starting to stretch out a small bit. The gap between Moravcik and Simicic is just about stabilized around 2 seconds. Michi Hoyer has not been able to make any sort of progress, at least at the time being. On Devin Moravcik, Marco De Buono has fallen off the back of him as well. So really what we were just looking at is our closest battle on track within the hypercar category. Meanwhile, Sebastian Wunsch is going to be feeling pretty comfortable actually with Kieran Prendergast 1.5 seconds back, not only because of the gap, but also because of just how reliable we've seen Kieran Prendergast to be. We know he's got a level head on his shoulders and he's a very, very competent driver, as is, of course, Sebastian Wunsch. So although a little bit of contact between the two of them led to challenges at Interlagos. Hopefully, they'll both be able to put it behind them and let it out on track.
Yeah, certainly. I think after the 2-week break, everything that happened in the first 2 rounds is a distant memory for a lot of these drivers, Braden, at this point. So it's very much, you would hope so, water under the bridge. And I don't just mean the water that we see at Sebring. No sign of rain on the horizon, unsurprisingly, of course, as you see the sunshine blaring through on Circuit de la Sarthe this evening. Then, as you see, Kieran Prendergast 1.3 seconds behind. He has started to close in a little bit on Seb Wunsch in the last couple of laps then, but it's not been, it's still very much in the balance then. It is, as I predicted, going to come down to strategy then as Seb Wunsch starts to really put the Ferrari through its paces through the Porsche curves. He sends the Ferrari in both classes really quick down the straights, but has to put the rear end out to get through some of the faster corners at the back end of the circuit then. But still fantastic to watch the strengths and weaknesses of these two very, very different cars, the Ferrari 488 and the McLaren 720S, of course. But they've got a big, big gap to Liskovitz, who's 4 seconds behind, then an even bigger gap behind him to Callum Cripps then. So the lead in GT3 is definitely starting to spread out. Hypercar, there's still, it's 2-second gaps within everyone in the top 4 essentially. So it's a little bit more congested there. And there's not been as much as we've seen in previous races where the GT3 pack has split up the Hypercars as they've been lapping them. It's been relatively clean so far, and I think that speaks to the high standards here in Pro. And certainly a lot of our drivers that have been competing in Contender as well will be looking at this, hoping they can get involved next season as well. Certainly we saw impressive performances from Mikolaj Hutrishki, who of course won the first 2 Hypercar rounds in Contender at Algarve and Fuji. In particular, Fuji was a very, very dominant performance too. And then you had the likes of Tobias Blumschein, who had that amazing fight back 2-second at Fuji as well, who of course was going to take part in a Pro and was sort of ruining his computer issues that he's since fixed. But that's always the way, isn't it? And I think Tobias will still have a great time in Contender then. But yeah, you see our movers and shakers then after the first 40 minutes almost completed. It's De Buono that's gained 2 positions, one from Grigoletto spinning in front of him, the other from, I think, clearing Aurelian Bru on the first lap there. But of course he did briefly was ahead of Hoyer early on until Hoyer overtook him. So it's been a little bit up and down. You see Farinelli getting it wrong, one of the Cadillacs behind, also coming into issues. I think it was Amos Lorito, and that's going to allow Gaetan, no, it's Quidel, of course. So Lorito's got a chance of passing the almost identical Cadillac number 3 then into Indianapolis. Lorito, the Italian, switches to the outside for Indianapolis. The Frenchman, Quidel, is going to try and defend the inside, but Lorito's got the run, he's got the speed. Quidel late on the brakes, and he defends position there. So Lorito, there was a sort of game of chicken there, and Lorito decided, I'm not going to play that game.
Yeah, impressive work breaking there into Indianapolis, a very hard braking zone after the brakes got an opportunity to really cool down the straightaway. But we've talked about the incredible standards of driving with these drivers, and this just goes to show it that they're so close from each other, but can even spread out is impressive because we know just how good these drivers are. So those who really do have some incredible speed are making their way to the front. One great example of that is Jules Neal, who in that last page you were able to see is up 16 positions from the start. Of course, that also includes positions gained from the GT3 category, having not laid down a qualifying lap, and that left him at the very, very back of the pack. But we were right on board with Michi Hoyer, and a great example of just how skilled these drivers are. Michi Hoyer is one of the best examples of that standard of driving that VMS has to offer.
Yeah, certainly. Remember, because it's an endurance round, there are more points up for grabs here. 39 points if you finish the race and cross the line in first position then at the end of the 2 hours, 40 minutes. And so it's a much bigger than the usual 25 points for the win that Michi Hoyer experienced there when he crossed the line first at Sebring, of course. And with him having that, let's see, it's the 6-point lead in the championship over Davin Rotchek as well. With Davin Rotchek finishing second in front of him, that would be, let's see, a good 39 for the win. I think it's 28 for second. And then third place would be 24 points. So it'd be a 4-point difference. So not only would Simičić be gained the full 39 points to be right back in the hunt, but Mrokček would be within 2 points of him if it finishes like this in the sort of overall pro championship then. So it is really important for Michi Hoyer to keep not only Marco De Buono behind him at arm's length, but also stop Davin Rotchek in that Lamborghini running away with Simičić at this point, because that could really put him in not only a very lonely race, but also a very difficult position in puts his lead in the championship potentially into jeopardy then, as we cut back to Marianski, the two Porsches having a very entertaining battle for 11th position here. And you can see that's Bert Knops in another Porsche right behind. So we got the Porsche trio all fighting to get that final spot in the top 10. And remember, it's the top 10 in Pro that are guaranteed entry next season as well. So no wonder they're fighting tooth and nail, even if it's just for 10th place, Braden.
Yeah, and we're seeing the different manufacturers and hypercars start to find each other. The BMWs up at the front, of course, with the lone Lamborghini. The two Ferraris are not far from one another out on track. And now we look at the battle between the Porsches. Of course, quite a few Cadillacs, so almost in any combination or order you put them in, they seem to find each other in a big battle, but amongst themselves, as we see the faster Porsches go around Lise Buzita, who finds himself 80 seconds, 80 plus seconds off the very back of the field, as we see Kakper Marianski do an attempt around the outside, but not able to get around the Porsche Penske number 4 of David Levy. So going to have to try and cue that move up again the next time around, because that very well could have been a pass, but Marianski, at least for the time being, content to stay behind the number 4.
Yeah, I liked how David Levy saw that one coming from light years in advance and just stuck to the middle of the road, almost didn't really react to having Marianski there. Marianski quite wisely sort of backed out there, knew he wasn't going to wake up early enough in the morning there to get one over on David Levy. So he's going to regroup and try again. But Bert Knops is really backing Levy into Marianski here, because he's clearly not got the pace of the other two Porsches. And it's Marcus Crawford with nearly 40 minutes elapsed that decides he doesn't want to risk it on the fuel tank. He wants to be the first to blink then. So important move for Marcus Crawford, who's of course near the back of the GD3 field, but still going there. Marianski has another look. They're both going into the pits then. So David Levy and Kakper Marianski, I think, are our first hypercars to abandon ship and go for the pits to try and get that undercut. And it's Daniele Farinelli that's also joining them in that Cadillac behind.
Yeah, the flashing red headlights on the front of both of those Porsches indicates that they are on the pit speed limiter, so they will join that lone BMW down on the pit lane. We're going to see some split strategies throughout this race here. Pretty close there to the rear end of the Proton Competition Porsche. Thankfully, no crew members there to have gotten squished between the rear wing of the Porsche and the front nose of the Cadillac. But this is going to be a developing storyline throughout the remainder of the race, still now rapidly approaching 2 hours left to go. And that is going to make make for a very interesting end to this race. See if there's anybody who ends up having to come in for a splash and dash. If 40 minutes or so ends up being the distance for these drivers, it should actually work out quite well, but we'll see who is able to save fuel better than others.
Yeah, the big question is where all three of these come out in relation to Bert Knops when he has to pit. Another thing that's been pointed out on, you might be hearing on stream, drivers lifting and coasting into some of these corners. That's partly to save fuel. They're also not really using the clutch as they drive, and that's why you might hear no power or throttle inputs as they're going into the corner, because that dictates how they upshift and downshift, of course. As we cut back to Amos Larito now, who's got a clear run at Guyton Quidel for 11th once again. You see Quidel, I think, really holding up Larito, who is feeling the pain of starting from the very, very back of the field. He's not really made the progress that, say, Jules Neal has. And Jules Neal's within about 1.4 seconds of Clement Gogourd then in the battle for 7th then, and they've got Grigoletto right behind them as well, about 8 tenths behind Neil then. So Grigoletto just continuing to light up the timing screens, and certainly those in the top 5 there might be feeling a little bit concerned. I think the top 4 might be feeling, well, Grigoletto is going to arrive too late to cause much issues for us. As Wunsch is in, it's our 2 leaders in GD3 that came in 1.5 seconds apart. They're now coming in, and it's everybody else having to react behind them. Liskowitz is in, Cripps is in, Rodriguez is in, and now Gaspar is in as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the disadvantages of being so far ahead of your competition, is that whenever you make a strategy move, the entire rest of the field has a few seconds to make a decision based on your decision. Of course, only so much you could do when that fuel tank starts to be empty and you have more fuels than fluid left in the tank. But for Sebastian Wunsch and for Kieran Prendergast, looks like Wunsch going to put on tires, so Prendergast is going to take the lead. Sebastian Wunsch still on the pit lane and now up on the jack, so Prendergast, I assume, is going to be double stinting those tires. Wunsch now pulls out of the pit lane behind another of the Ferraris. I'm not sure if that's someone coming in or out, and meanwhile, Simoncic is in for a pit stop, as is David Moravcik, so they were able to go a full lap longer, were the leaders, than some of our further back running cars. Marco De Buono, Orlane Brew, many drivers coming into the pit lane, and so this is really when the pits are getting busy.
Not a whole lot of strategic convergence here. Luckily, most of the GT3s are coming out of the pit lane as the hypercars pull in there, so luckily we're not seeing too many repeats of, remember Spa, where Michi Hoyer got spun around, I think, by one of the McLarens. I think it was Fabien Ballet that was just coming in and spun Michi Hoyer around right as he was going into his pit box. Somehow he registered in the pit box sideways, and we see, a similar thing happening there for Amos Lorito. There's Michi Hoyer is blocked a little bit as he tries to escape from the pit lane there, and it's Michi Hoyer that's going to gain a lot of time actually on our 2 leaders then, as Moravcik comes out just half a second now behind Jerne Simoncic there. So the hypercars really bunching together, and Hoyer taking a risk to sort of stop losing time to the Lamborghini in front of him, but he's come out about where he was because that was a bit of a slow, delayed exit there, but at least he is well clear of De Buono, who I think is just coming out now about 5 seconds in arrears. Yeah, so that gap has now made it so that we have a pack of 3 at the very front of the field, and then Marco De Buono a little bit on an island here, 6-7 seconds behind that lead group, but 1.5 seconds ahead of Orlane Brew, who's a little bit further back, and Julian Guerin is another 3-4 seconds back. So they're spreading out a little bit throughout the top 5 as we see Jules Neal slicing and dicing through some traffic. That was the BMW that was the first to come in, and it looks like Fabio Grigoletto has completely missed the corner, going to be off the track, potentially got some rubber, some marbles on those tires, and ended up very rapidly in the gravel. But this has just been a fantastic drive towards the front for Grigoletto, who now has the next set, has his target set on Jules Neal. So continuing to sight his way up the field, and with 2 hours remaining, certainly could be well in contention by the end of this race. Maybe not for the win, but certainly for a top 5. Yep, so let's go through our standings then with 2 hours left to go on the clock, or just under 2 hours, I should say. Kieran Prendergast has either underfueled or double stinted his tires to come out ahead of Seb Wunsch, and I think Erwin Liskowitz has done a very similar thing to get up to second. There is Wunsch, who is being held up a little bit by Erwin Liskowitz. So this is working really well for Kieran Prendergast here, as Erwin Liskowitz is sort of unintentionally helping him out here. Callum Cripps is still in 4th, with Michel Rodriguez in 5th, a couple of seconds behind him. And it's Louis Gaspar in 6th, Kat Pagasier in the BMW in 7th, Fabien Ballet, he's fallen to 8th, so the strategy is certainly not currently panning out for him. Regan Mitchell is 9th, and Elise Buzita rounds out the top 10 after a messy start for him. But look at this, Seb Wunsch is already lining up Erwin Liskowitz here. So Liskowitz, I don't think, has really got the pace to hold him up for too much longer into the Porsche curse, but nonetheless, he turns in from the outside, and Seb Wunsch, he cannot afford to really be taken out here if he wants to stay in contention for this race win. So he needs to be careful here, but he also needs to make sure he doesn't spend the next 30 minutes or so just stuck behind this Ferrari, because Prendergast will just waltz away into the sunset. He's threatened to do it so often this season, and he might make good on that promise now. Seb Wunsch gets another really good run on that fellow Ferrari, but it's such a similar car. He's going to have to take a risky move here into the forward curves. And again, Erwin Liskowitz, we saw this in Sebring. He is not the easiest customer to pass in these sorts of circumstances.
No, and discernment is sometimes the better part of valor, as we see Wunsch get to the inside now of Liskowitz, going to try to make that move heading into turn 1 and into the chicane. The Dunlop chicane has proven difficult at the beginning of the race. Is he going to be able to be deeper on the brakes? Liskowitz has the inside, but yeah, Wunsch is going to have that position. So up into second position, promote that number 86 into second on your scorecards. Meantime, our leaders are slicing through some of our traffic, and let's go through the standings.
Right, so let's pick up where we left off then in Hypercar then. So Jenny Simoncic has maintained the lead, but Davin Mrocek, has he underfueled the car? Has he maybe put fresher tyres on than Jenny Simoncic? I think it's pretty level between the two. I think the only thing that'd be different is the amount of fuel put in. Michi Hoyer had a quicker stop and is about 2 seconds behind Davin Mrocek, I think, at the present moment. Then it's Marco De Bruno, who's 5 seconds behind. So De Bruno had a slow stop, but he might gain that time back in the overall scheme of things once the strategies play out. Aurelian Brew is still in 5th with Julian Gurin in 6th. Then it's Jules Neal from the back of the grid to 7th, holding off Fabio Grigoletto, Clement Gugud 9th, and the top 10 rounded out by Poland's Kacper Marianski.
Yeah, and the front of the field has been no shortage of action, but really further down the field that we have had the most action so far this week. We've had a spectacular opening trio of rounds at Spa, at Interlagos, and at Sebring, and now things calming down a little bit. So you have a sense this is maybe the calm before the storm as time starts to continue ticking down. It's going to heat up and up and up. And for Fabio Grigoletto, he's going to have to be hot all race long in order to make up for lost time at the very beginning. And we've commented multiple times on the struggles for Grigoletto to hold on to track position. Great qualifier, but has a hard time in the race. And I feel like last week kind of broke that streak a little bit at Sebring, was able to hold on better to track position and subsequently get a great finish. So are we going to see the comeback from Fabio Grigoletto this week instead?
Yeah, it was interesting that I don't think they did any double stintting on the tyres at Cadillac there. So Grigoletto clearly feels there's no need to do a different strategy to get up the field because he's got the pace on track compared to the likes of Jules Neal and Gurin. Although Neal, to be fair, is one of the more competitive Cadillacs as well. Sort of second, him and Grigoletto have had a couple of battles earlier this season. Interlagos comes to mind. They're about to have another one because Neal has got it all wrong at the Mulsanne corner, dipping a wheel into the gravel, and that allows Fabio Grigoletto to gratefully nip up the inside. Thanks very much, Jules. I'll see you later.
Yeah, that's going to be probably one of the easiest passes you get to see all day, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Jules Neal try to fight back here heading into Indianapolis. Going to go to the outside and try to make a move, but there's a BMW, a lapped car that's going to be in the way and right on the apex. I imagine they're going to have to pass him, so he's going to slide through, and Jules Neal's missed the corner. He's missed it completely, and he's locked up a wheel and ended up very nearly in the gravel on the outside of Indy and finds himself now under pressure from Clement Gugud just behind.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens. We make one mistake, and then you trip up trying to lap at GD3 as well. It can really go from you being fighting in that top 7 to all of a sudden struggling to stay in the top 8 here, with Clement Gugud making good on some of the promise shown earlier to try and make an impact here, as Braden, I think, had to leave the commentary box then. So, well, thank you very much, Braden, for your help so far in this race, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of action in these last hour and 50 minutes to entertain us then, as we look at Marco De Bruno, who's 2 seconds ahead of, 2.7 seconds, I should say, ahead of Aurelian Brew, and making his way through the GD3 pack that's now becoming progressively more spread out, and it's a little bit easier when, as we see in the gravel goes Capagacia, I think, who's hit a lot of issues then coming into this looks like the final sector then, so that's out of the Porsche curves and towards the Maison Blanche. Amos Laurito, Daniele Farinelli make it through relatively unscathed, but Laurito having a much slower stop. Of course, it was Laurito the pit a lap after Farinelli. So if we look at the Levi Mariansky duo, them pitting before Bert Knops has resulted in a 6-second gap between Levy and Bert Knops. So Knops is sort of the loser there, as we see Gacia coming into the pits for repairs, I think, from that incident there. Davin Rotchek, by the way, 1.6 seconds behind Jene Simoncic in the overall lead. So Rotchek is matching Simoncic blow for blow at the moment as Bert Knops goes about as wide as he can through Techeru, trying to carry as much speed as possible, as he might be worried about Gaiten Quidel trying to snatch that 12th place off of him. So Bert Knops was running 10th before the pit stops. Now it's looking like he might struggle to hold on to 12th here. Meanwhile, we cut back to Gagaud and Jules Neal. Neal has got things a little bit more under control now. And Clement Gagaud not able to make the inroads he was before, but there is a bit more lap GD3 traffic that may well influence this battle then, as they clear Erwin Liskevitz in the Ferrari, running in second now, of course, having well, in third, sorry, having been passed by Seb Wunsch, who we see just being lapped in the foreground now. And of course, Isla Liskevitz and Kieran Prendergast decided to double stint the tyres. We got confirmation of that in the chat from people watching Prendergast stream, whereas Seb Wunsch, we know, has put fresh tyres on. And look at that gap between himself and Seb Wunsch. It's within 2 seconds now, as you see on screen here. Seb Wunsch 2.1 seconds behind and closing. He's got a little bit more grip to work with at this phase, and he is intent on retaking that lead on track. But Prendergast may well use some of the clearer air that he's got to his advantage at the moment. It was certainly worth the gamble, given that Seb Wunsch was starting to pull about 1.3 seconds ahead before the pit stops. So they did make a mistake before the pit stops took place. And now we see Mariansky having to lap him as well from 9th position. David Levy in arrears, being dragged along as well. So Mariansky's actually overtaken Levy at some point after the pit stop, because I believe he came out behind the Porsche Penske, did the fat racing Porsche, the fat turbo Porsche. Meanwhile, Davin Rotchek 2 seconds behind Simoncic. So Simoncic has gained another 4/10 then on the previous lap. You see, it's a private battle all to themselves. Michi Hoyer, that a little bit too far back, not really making an impression on Rotchek at the moment then. So we saw Michi Hoyer tried an unconventional strategy in the endurance race at Spa, which allowed him to double stint the tyres and lead early on, but a much longer, even longer circuit than Spa here. You really need a great pit stop in order to make up the kind of deficit that Hoyer had. And Michi Hoyer hasn't really been able to do very much at the present moment, sadly, in terms of challenging these top two. But Simoncic and Rotchek still in sight of one another, and that will keep Rotchek's hopes alive. He can keep the pressure on Simoncic, you never know. It could keep things interesting as we get along. As this Kakpa Gazier out of the race then, so that's our third retirement. Gazier, Littlemore, and Manninen are all out of the running, which is a shame for them, as we instead now focus on Louis Gaspar in the Ferrari, closing on Michel Rodriguez then. Rodriguez, who has had a bit of an up and down race, starting near the front, has now dropped to 5th behind Liskevitz and the other McLaren, if I'm not mistaken, that's in between them. Louis Gaspar then has been certainly more impressive here than we've seen in the opening few races, where I want to say Portuguese driver Gaspar, I'm pretty sure he isn't actually. As I just look at my sheet of nationalities, GD3 Louis Gaspar is Portuguese. There we go. I did remember that correctly. So there we go. This happens when you doubt yourself as a commentator. You sort of kind of stab at guessing a nationality, and sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. But it is certainly a Portuguese driver at the wheel of that Ferrari, closing on Michelle Rodriguez, who is a Swedish driver, not to be confused with Hollywood actress Michelle Rodriguez, whose first name is spelled slightly differently. I think often Michelle Rodriguez goes by Michelle Moniz Rodriguez to avoid that confusion with the star of the Fast and Furious films. But certainly the pace not letting up here as Gaspar within 8/10 now will get a lovely tow down the Mulsanne. Not necessarily going to guarantee the overtake from that far back, as Rodriguez actually has a pretty decent exit from the first Mulsanne chicane. And the field very, very spread out at the present moment, aside from this particular battle in GD3. And of course, Prendergast versus Wunsch within 1.1 seconds. So Prendergast might find himself under pressure for track position before too long. If he can hold up Seb Wunsch, bunch him up, then it might give a little bit of an opportunity here for Kieran Prendergast to make this strategy work. But if he loses the lead and Seb Wunsch is able to disappear off into distance on the fresher tyres, it could be a very, very different case and scenario for Prendergast to deal with. Certainly he will not be keen to just settle in for second for the 4th race in a row on track. He is going for victory, and that is fantastic to see. Certainly held on a lot longer than the man in 3rd position, of course, was able to in his Ferrari, which of course is Erwin Liskowitz that I'm thinking of. Here is Davin Rockcheck. We ride on board with the front bumper of the Lamborghini Iron Lynx number 19. As we see more, another Corvette. That's Elise Buzita, who had a difficult start to the race, being knocked out of the way, really, by Ryan Littlemore, who then retired. And now he's trying to make up that ground. The last Corvette running, and just about left enough space there for Davin Rockcheck, who reacted at the last minute, trying to get a cheeky bit of slipstream from the back of the Corvette there. 1 hour, 43 minutes left on the clock then, and Davin Rockcheck, of course, has got, having attended every race so far this season, has finished on the podium in 2 of them, was 4th at Spa as well. He is one of our favourites for the championship, finding a way with Michi Hoyer, who is yet to finish off the podium so far this season, Michi Hoyer, and is certainly set to continue that streak so far. Marco De Buono still keeping things steady, about 5 seconds in arrears, but Hoyer has been well and truly dropped from the lead battle, 6.4 seconds here. So Hoyer is very much in no man's land, and that's exactly, I think, what he would have feared at this phase, because it means he's in for a long haul here. As we see a yellow flag somewhere out on track, which clears pretty quickly then, so it can't have been anything too major or serious. I'll have to see if there's any interesting comments in the chat. Fresh tyres are much faster, says David John Gibbons. Seb Wunsch will be in with Kieran Prendergast, or will be with Kieran Prendergast in 3 to 4 laps. So that was probably about 3 laps ago. So Kieran is holding on at the present moment. Our 2 lead battles, at least, within 2.6 seconds in Hypercar, and then 1 second separates them in GD3 at the last time of checking. It's a case of, even if you've got the fresher tyres, it's not necessarily a done and dusted move. You have got to rely on perhaps a mistake, or as we see Prendergast, I think is fighting away and have just been overtaken then by Seb Wunsch for the GD3 lead. There we go. So Seb Wunsch, just about makes the Mulsanne chicane there, but a fantastic move. Unfortunately, we didn't quite see it on stream there. But Kieran Prendergast now tucking back into the slipstream, hoping to get his own back. But Seb Wunsch full on the front. The Ferrari straight line speed very much coming to the fore here, although Kieran Prendergast is going to get the embers of slipstream here, going to try and make a move into the second Mulsanne chicane. He's showing his nose. He's not far enough alongside then, so he will have to tuck in here for the Courbe de Honduras. And Kieran Prendergast has to now settle into second position, as Seb Wunsch just using the fresh tyres to great effect there out of the Tetra Rouge corner and on the long run towards the first chicane, and he made the move just before the chicane as well. Just about was able to break in time as we saw the end of that move. Sadly, no replays as of yet in Le Mans Ultimate, so we can't show you it, as Kieran Prendergast again breaks super late into Mulsanne corner, trying to put pressure on Seb Wunsch. Seb Wunsch goes slightly wide over the curb, but still a decent exit from that Ferrari then. So Kieran Prendergast keeping Wunsch in check at the present moment. determined not to let the Ferrari get away. And now he's moving to the outside. He's got a good run here on the long run towards Indianapolis through the Courbe du Golf. He's alongside on the outside, but Seb Vunch has surely got the inside here. Will not give up this leap without a fight. Prendergast has to concede very, very reluctantly and lift off there from the outside. But still, gets a good exit through Indianapolis too as well. So he's not going to let that deter his attack. But with those worn tires, they are starting to feel the pain now. But Seb Vunch is starting to look a little bit flustered on the exit of Arnage now. And Prendergast is gearing up for yet another assault then as they come towards the Porsche curves and the Virage DuPont. Prendergast again is going to be on the outside here for the entry. This is going to have to be a bold move if the British driver is going to attempt it on the German. Remember, these two, of course, collided together at Interlagos some weeks ago, and it ended very, very badly for Seb Vunch in particular. But Kieran Prendergast, who did, of course, get a penalty from that and lost in position to Arda Ercan on that occasion. He's going to put that well out of his mind here as he the rear tires just hang on there through Maison Blanche. And I believe I might be about to be joined by broadcast director Nicolas Domino, who's been watching, of course, the entire race so far as we close within the 1 hour elapsed margin. I think we have had an hour elapsed then. And Nicolas, we've just seen then Kieran Prendergast try to double stint the tires, and Seb Vunch has gotten through and is now starting to streak away here. So this is backfiring a bit for Kieran Prendergast here. And at least Erwin Liskovitz has done the same strategy, so he's not under threat from behind. But now surely he's going to lose even more time when he inevitably pits for a tire change at the next pit stop.
Yeah, the guys on stream should be able to hear me now. Yeah, that's correct. He did take a chance with doing the double stints, but it has definitely backfired. And Kieran, the forever number 2 in this league, he just can't seem to really get that P1 at the moment, and now it will be even more difficult. He will just lose more and more time as the tires will just degrade even further. But let's see if after the next pit stop with some new tires, if he can't get that McLaren up and battle for it. With still 1 hour and 37 minutes to go, there's still a lot of racing to head out there.
That's very true, Nick. And meanwhile, Gaten Quidel's within 2/10 of Bert Knops in the fight for 11th position in Hypercar. Then we also see Grigoletto's win 4/10 of Gurin fighting that Ferrari for 6th. So Grigoletto continues his rise through the order, which is fantastic to see. Quidel is very, very close to Knops at the present moment then. So would love to see that battle if possible, as Prendergast struggling to stay with Seb Vunch. He's got to try and keep his hopes alive, hope that something can happen, as Quidel got very, very close into the Porsche curves there, but had to back out. Oh, and just taps the wall.
Ooh, that's
Quidel
close.
taking lots of risks here to put Bert Knops under pressure here, but the Dutchman, cool, calm and collected. Quidel, the Frenchman in his home event, going absolutely nuts to try and get into 12th position here after a slightly messy first phase of the race, couple of mistakes creeping in, and he's going hell for leather out there.
Oh, and he's really just attacking those curbs as much as the car will even hold on to. But just going through the Porsche curves, you're just losing all downforce on the nose, and the car is just drifting out. You're fighting it to keep it in place, and the car just won't go there. So it's really difficult being this close to another car through that section of the track, and you're just destroying the tires doing it as well. The tires will, after this, when they're getting off, start yelling at you. They're just really piling on the pressure, and all of these cars, as some of the viewers might see, is having the yellow walls there as they are on the mediums, as he got a much better exit out of the last corner, Techeroos there, and onto the Mulsanne here, and that's a beautiful attack, but Bert Knops is not done with that move.
Yeah, Bert Knops immediately tucks into the slipstream to try and fight back into the first Mulsanne chicane there. He's got the inside, but Guyton Quidel brakes really, really late around the outside. Can he complete
Oh,
the
that's
move?
contact!
Or pushing him along at the apex there. So you saw Quidel had to sort of last of the late breakers there, had to get the car actually stopped to get through the corner and just about pulled that move off. It was very similar, I think, to the Seb Vunch move that we just missed on stream in GD3, of course. But I think Quidel well and truly up into 12th now, and you saw he's just got that pace advantage over Bert Knops. I think you're right, maybe Quidel, though, abusing his tires a little bit more, and they are, as you say, screaming at him, and what they're screaming at him, I'm not sure we can say on stream, but it's certainly not positive. And now we see Julian Gurin has got Grigoletto alongside him out of the Mulsanne corner, and Grigoletto looks slightly ahead then as they go side by side, and it's Gurin that has to tuck in behind as they both lap the BMW GD3 of Marcus Crawford then. So Julian Gurin loses another position to Grigoletto. That drops him out of the top 6 then, and Grigoletto able to complete the move into Indianapolis there. So the Italian stallion is just on fire at the moment, picking cars off left, right, and center. But now it's another 8.9 second gap to Aurelian Brew in front of him. But still, with 90 minutes left on the clock, you've got to say Grigoletto could get maybe even as high as 4th here by the end of this with the pace that he's got. He has been one of the outstanding stars. He didn't let that being spun around at the first corner dissuade him. We didn't quite see how that happened. I think there might have been contact between either himself or Hoyo and De Buono. We'll have to see afterwards. But yeah, certainly Grigoletto not letting that taking that right out to the back of his mind and getting on with business to great effect here. He's put on a superb show today.
Yeah, and sometimes you can really be fired up after having, such a misstep. And as we've seen him throughout the season, he has qualified extremely well and then just fallen off during the race. But today we have seen him going through the field, and that, as he's at the back of the field and he's a lot faster than that, then he's going the other way. So I would say it's always a lot more fun when you overtake and get up to these P5, P6 than it is when you fall off and get off the pace. But I would say with 8 seconds up to Aurelian Brew there, that's gonna be difficult for Galetto, but he is quite a lot faster at this point. But let's see if he can keep it up. We have seen him fall off during the stints, especially these endurance races. So but he's up there getting the points for the Cadillac. And for him, even more important, he is beating his sister Cadillac with Jules Niels in the same livered car. I think there's a little battle between those two, having the fastest of the 3 lemon car.
Yeah, remember, he is, of course, 4th in the championship too, having finished on the podium at the 3rd round at Sebring, and in his first podium finish, of course, for the Tatum Esports, the Italian organization that, of course, Amos Lorito, we know, a big part of that, as of course he's part of the Lamborghini esports program as their head driver coach as well. So great to see Grigoletto continuing his strong vein of form as we look at Seb Vunch then, now back in the lead. The German having a really, really strong run and starting to drop Kieran Prendergast well and truly. Prendergast starts to see his hopes of victory disappearing then, with 90 minutes left to go, and it's going to take a mistake, I think, from Seb Vunch under pressure. And the problem is with these old tyres, there's only so much pressure that Prendergast can apply. You can see just in the background Erwin Liskevitz suffering from the same issue there. So Prendergast really needed Liskevitz to hold up Seb Vunch, but Seb Vunch, luckily for him, was able to clear both of them in relatively short succession in the scheme of things. So yeah, Seb Vunch looking really, really good to launch himself up from 5th in the overall standings as well. And of course, in the Endurance Cup,
somebody has been off. I think Clement Gagard.
Levy, I think.
No, I think it's have been Clement Gagard who has been out there. He has lost a position to Marensky there. So I think he has been off there in the
He
last
was being
corner.
caught by Mariansky,
Yeah.
I noticed. So it does seem that Kakpo has just continued what's been a quite strong run for him. Remember, early in the race, he was outside the top 10. They were the first to him, and Levy and Farinelli were the first to pit. It's not really worked well for Farinelli, who's still down in 15th behind Amos Lorito. But certainly for Levy and Mariansky. It's worked reasonably well. Levy just outside the top 10, so he's about where he was, but Mariansky's been the big winner in terms of strategy. The only issue is, again, he might have to pit first, and that could come back to bite him. He might have to do a bit more fuel saving in the latter phases of the race to stay sort of on the same strategy as everybody else. Julian Guerin still keeping Grigoletto within 9/10, and Aurelian Brew is matching the pace of Grigoletto as well. The gap stayed rock solid at just actually though, as I say that, Brew has clearly been held up and lost about half a second there. Immediately losing it again. So he's fluctuating wildly mid-sentence here in commentary, which is always fun. But at least it is exciting. There's Simičić, by the way, has really gotten a move on and has shifted 5 seconds to the good ahead of Davin Rokcek there, as Hoyer has been dropped to nearly 8 seconds behind Davin Rokcek then. Marco De Bruno, though, having done the full service, put the fresh tyres on, is still 5 seconds behind Michi Hoyer, so it definitely looks like those who can live with the lack of grip and sort of rely on that straight line speed, as long as their exits are still solid, then they're able to sort of live with the drop-off in tyre performance. But those who pit for the fresh ones are certainly feeling the benefits of it at this phase, where those who have been double staining, their tyres are starting to cry enough, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. And also, if whatever the BMW have put in Simičić's car, give me that, because that's a lot of time to taken out of Morocek, because Morocek, as we know, is not a slow driver, and being 5.2 seconds ahead of him after the pit stops, that's a lot. He has taken out 4 seconds in 20 minutes. That's a lot of time. But as we just see these drivers here, they're just trying to navigate traffic with the GT3s, and sometimes you lose a bit of time and sometimes you gain a bit of time. It's just the nature of endurance racing. You have to be really, as we saw the Ferrari getting a little bit close there, but you just have to be patient when you're going out here. Also with Michi Hoyer, he is just, as we've seen, he is just not as fast as the two in front, and yeah, he was very happy that he could get a lot of points in the championship last time, but he needs a bit more luck and maybe a little bit more training in some of the other races to really challenge the two in front of him. They are extremely fast out there.
Yeah, we know Michi Hoyer has talked at length, indeed, in his streams and in his videos on his YouTube channel about how much he loves Le Mans Ultimate. But of course, the problem is Simičić is just a bit better at him at it, as was the case in R Factor 2 as well, to be fair. And yeah, Davin Rokcek certainly. To be fair, actually, Rokcek has gained about a second on Simičić this lap, so I think Simičić may have been held up a little bit in traffic in this final sector then. But
yeah, if you find somebody in the Porsche curves, you can easily lose a second or two with the speed that these hypercars are going through there. And with the, I think there have been Sebastian Wunsch ahead. He has just overtaken, maybe going into Porsche there.
Yeah, that would certainly track with what we're seeing on screen at the moment then. But yeah, it's certainly looking very, very good for Seb Wunsch. Took a fantastic pole position, 6/10 clear of Kieran Prendergast. As we see, Julian Guerin and Flavio Grigoletto going either side of that McLaren there, and Guerin has to break the track limits. Can't afford to do that too many times as well, because we know it's fairly strict track limits throughout the series, but Le Mans in particular. I think it's is it 3 points in total that they're allowed to exceed by, or is it 5?
I think it's 3 points that they're allowed to exceed, but when you exceed, you don't get a full point. It depends on how much time did you gain, and you can also go off track, and then it will say you have gotten off track, and then you can slow down a little bit and gain, not get the penalty. So it's 3 complete points where you gain, where the game says that you have gained an advantage. So if you go off a little bit and just lift off, it will say, all right, you didn't gain anything. So it's a very good system in that regard, and you just don't get punished for small mistakes. But if you just have the smallest out there, it will also ping you and say, oh, is there something here? Maybe not. So
yeah,
they have to be
confirmation,
careful.
By the way, Nick, from James Huff. It's 5 points for endurance, as it was at Spa. So that's why I
5
got a bit
points.
confused. But
5
it's 3
points.
points for track limits in the sprints, because of course they're much shorter races at just the hour long essentially. But yeah, this is over twice the length at 2.4 hours. We've got 1 hour 25 minutes left to go, so we are closing in then on our second pit stops then in the next couple of minutes time, I believe. So it should be very, very interesting, and that should be, in theory at least, our penultimate set of pit stops, unless somebody's doing something very, very radical with the strategy. Elise Buzita trying to catch up to Marcus Crawford, who is 50 seconds ahead. I think Buzita may have had a long stop for repairs as well, which is why he's a little bit adrift of the rest of the top 10. But nonetheless, given that Sebring, when he finished 5th, that was his first finish actually in the VMS Pro Championship, Elise Buzita, I think, would be very, very happy to get a finish in an endurance race as well, because they really, really needed that. The Corvettes had a horrible opening pair of races, didn't they, at Spa and Interlagos, with neither of them getting to the checkered flag. And Buzita has very much, while he's rarely troubled the front runners, he's been very, very consistent. He's taken up the opportunities when they've been left on the table by others, and sometimes that's what you need to do in endurance racing. He's been quick enough to be there and take advantage. Sometimes that's what you need to do, just keep a calm head and recover. We saw Grigoletto has definitely recovered despite a horrible start to the race, and Buzita, it's great to see him still hanging in there, and he's catching Marcus Crawford actually by about 7/10 to a second a lap. So he might run out of time before the end if he can't consistently do that. But yeah, certainly Marcus Crawford might not be lonely in the final phase of this race. Certainly, I think Buzita has still got a chance at finishing in the top 9 here.
Yeah, and this is really, the spirit of endurance. You keep going until the checkered flag. We saw Buzita he was already in the pits on lap 1, so I think he might have had some contact at the beginning. But great to see him out there, and with the P10, he is in a points scoring position. So, and with the other cars behind him, DNF, there's definitely more on table here, and he could be lucky that some of the LMPs there might hit one of the GT3s, or somebody makes a mistake, or a million other things, and get positions. So you just have to be there at the end, as we just see here. Levis getting closer and closer to Gagard. That is not done, as we have seen one of our LMPs in the pits.
Mariansky. So Kappa Mariansky's had to pit first yet again. But interestingly, we've seen David Levy and Daniele Farinelli, I think, who's just coming through now. Farinelli probably doesn't have to... He's probably been able to extend another lap, whereas Mariansky has used a lot of... Yet Farinelli is staying out too, as he just avoids the duty free there. So all 3 of our hypercar, 2 of our hypercars that pit first, and he's a bit of furious wheel shaking there from Farinelli. He's clearly not happy that the McLaren didn't see him in time there. But interesting that Mariansky, we saw, had great pace there, but maybe he had to use a little bit more fuel during that stint. And this does not bode well for Mariansky. With 1 hour 20 minutes left to go, he could be quite marginal on fuel in those final stages then.
Yeah, definitely, and he's maybe not as prolific in the art of lift and coast, as we see some of the drivers just putting in the clutch as they're getting down to a braking zone, just cutting the engine completely off, and just gaining a little bit of, or saving a bit of fuel during that. One of the drivers who's been extremely well at that art has been Michi Hoya, who we have seen in the past, not only with his tires, but also fuel management. He's been really, really good at doing that. But also just, Marco Bruno here in the Ferrari. It's a really strong showing for the Ferrari out there. And P4, this will be some great points, and
2.4 seconds behind. He's almost half the gap to Michi Hoyer as well. So let's hope he's not used too much fuel to do it. But we know
that's Brew.
Ferrari's definitely got fresh tires. Oh, and it's Brew actually.
It's Brew who's close at him. Yeah, but no, what I was about to say with Bruno is that he's outside of the top 10 in the championship, and as you talked about earlier, it's the top 10 in the championship that will get automatic entry into Season 2. So it's really important to get into that top 10 and get some good points here.
Yeah, Aurelian Brew, meanwhile, looking for his second, fourth place in a row after finishing in that position at Sebring as well, which was a pretty strong performance. We didn't see a lot of it on stream because it was a little bit back from that amazing top 3 fight between Hoyer, Morocek, and Grigoletto. It really feels like Simic, Morocek, Hoyer, and Grigoletto are the 4 standouts in Hypercar this season, with a couple others impressing here and there, like De Bruyne, like Aurelian Brew, and like Jules Neal as well is another one that comes to mind. Occasionally, your likes of your Mario Tumps and your Mark Veit, who I think had issues very, very early on, or I don't think they even made the start, did they? No. So I don't think they qualified, and they didn't choose to start the race, so we really were down to... Luckily, the 3 Porsches that did start the race have all been sort of battling each other for position, essentially Mariansky, Levy, and Knops. So they have put on a show at the very least, but certainly Aurelian Brew, who has he's kept the gap to Grigoletto fairly stable at 8.5 seconds, but we know Grigoletto doesn't need too much encouragement, and certainly if Aurelian Brew is held up behind Marco De Bruyne, we could see a 3-way fight for this 4th position, which Fabio Grigoletto, I'm sure, is absolutely relishing the prospect of.
Yeah, definitely. But as we just see here, I think we have some more in the pits. Oh my goodness, now it's all heating up now. Let's see if they can get longer. And this is David Levitz, who is in the pit in the number 4 Porsche out there.
It's David Levy then, so he should be joined by Farinelli. So this shows
and he's got in there.
Oh, and Seb Bunch, I think, just right behind Farinelli as well. This shows that Levy and Farinelli have been able to go 1 lap longer than Mariansky, despite pitting at the same time in the first stint. So that puts them in a really good position compared to the Polish driver in the number 99 Porsche. He may undercut them here, but certainly in terms of fuel, he's going to have potentially a lot less to play with. Our top 3 in GT3 are in the pits, and I think the rest of the GT3 field is going to immediately filter in here. So it's about to get, as you say, very busy in this pit lane, and potentially some of our hypercars on the lead lap, like Simic and Morocek, are going to be in between that lot as well. There's Mariansky. Let's see where he comes out relative to David Levy.
David Levy is out. He is getting out of the pits there, but what is going on here? Yeah, shorter stop, but also if we didn't see if he got tires. I don't think he has gotten tires then, with the amount that he has saved here. But yeah, also you know don't have to fuel as much. But with in this series they don't have tire warmers, so these cars are getting out there on cold tires, and it's really difficult. You have to be really careful. So
action in the GT3 pit lane. Sorry to interrupt you there, Nicholas, but they're all filtering in this gear. Very interesting. And Prendergast this time comes out behind Seb Bunch, as we expected. And
he is down P
as well.
Yeah, he's in P3. That has been a really long pit stop for him. But he has also taken tires. Has Liskowitz... Has
Liskowitz triple stinting his tires?
This could be
Surely
interesting.
Not. Because he definitely did the same as Prendergast in the first series of pit stops. And this time Seb Bunch, who I think definitely changed tires in the first pit stop, has decided to double stint now at this phase. So that's really fascinating. It's really mixed up GT3 orders. We see Gaspar exiting the pits ahead of Rodriguez, but only just. So it looks like Michel Rodriguez has put new tires on, and Louis Gaspar potentially, I think, has jumped in by double stinting his tires as well.
Yeah, let's see where this all takes them. Prendergast now on, as I expect, new set of rubber, new set of stickers down here, and let's see if he can gain a lot of that time. But what can also be happening is what we have seen before, is that these cars are actually gonna take damage if you hit each other in the pits, and what we have seen also sometimes with all of these cars there, you will get moved either back or to the side, and that also lose your time. So he could lose there, as we have all of the prototypes into the pits now.
Yep, so it looks like they've all starting to filter in, as you say. Grigoletto and Morocek there, and there's Simic getting away first, as expected. There's Michi Hoyer with De Bruyne just in front of him as well. So It's a waiting game, all patiently waiting to be let out and play onto the track. But Simoncic got first service, and is going to resume his lead of the race over David Marocek almost certainly. There is Marocek being released now. We wait now to see.
Interesting. De Bruyne performed.
Double stinting then. So De Bruyne even putting a bit less fuel in, and he's jumped Michi Hoyer for track position, and we see the Cadillac in there as well as that Aurelian Brew ahead of Michi Hoyer. So Michi Hoyer, he has put fresh tires on, but now he's got 2 cars in front of him that were not in front of him before. So he's got to clear them as soon as possible.
Yeah, this is, really hurting Michi here. Now he has to get out there and try and see if he can overtake these two and use a lot of those tires that are new and fresh. And he was thinking, I have to get up there and try and see if I can catch Marocek or Simoncic. But now he has to battle first and use a lot of those tires. But now just get out there, get them into temperature, be careful with them, because that can really affect how these tires are for the rest of the stint.
Yep, exactly. With these cold tires, you want to warm up quickly, not abuse them too much. Hoyer within 7/10 of Aurelian Brew, so at least he's getting a bit of slipstream down the Mulsanne straight as we look at Marianski trying to close on David Levy in the battle for 9th position. Marianski can't afford to use up too much fuel chasing down David Levy as well, because he pit lap before. Missed from Aurelian Brew. He has cut that first chicane. That's going to compromise his exit. Michi Hoyer breezes through, and that was, I think, a lot easier than Michi Hoyer was perhaps expecting.
Yeah, he's definitely taking that and laughing all the way down the straight here and saying, thank you, there's a lot of my tires that I don't have to destroy. But one thing that Michi might also do while he's battling these guys is saving fuel for this last pit stop. We have talked about him being the fuel saving master here, and maybe this is one thing that he could do, because he definitely has the pace, but Bruno is quick out there and not somebody he's easily gonna pass.
Yeah, we know that Ferrari is a bit of a monster in a straight line. We also see the other Ferrari, Julian Guerin, under attack from Jules Neal, who's caught up in the pit stop phase. Neal getting the Cadillac well into the slipstream in this battle for 7th position. Then both of these drivers have been passed by Grigolado. Neal now sees the road open up in front of him into Mulsanne corner, and Julian Guerin could not really have defended that one, but he now tucks into the slipstream on the long run down the Courbe du Golf, then towards Indianapolis, and the Cadillac can't really streak off into the distance just yet because that Ferrari is pushing him along. Julian Guerin and Jules Neal going at it, and the rear wing is almost in the front.
Oh, that is bump drafting. That is bump drafting if I've ever seen anything. Like, he's just pushing that Cadillac through towards. Oh, yeah. That's a lot of dust on there. Jules Neal's using all of the track and a little bit more.
So our 2 Frenchmen called Jules, absolutely inseparable in name and in position on the track then. But Guerin comes off second best on this occasion, and Jules Neal, he had the opportunity, he had to go for it, and that's definitely going to do his race a load of good. A shame for Julian Guerin. He's had a solid race. A top 8 would still be one of his best results of the season so far, but he's sort of been shuffled back by all the Cadillacs, hasn't he? First Grigolado and now Neal too, as we see Marcus Crawford in the way. And Jules Neal has to pick his moment round the outside then at the S's there. And into Maison Blanche they go. But luckily Crawford doing exactly what you need to do, keeping well out of harm's way. His battle is, of course, with Buzita, who has actually jumped him in the pits there. So Buzita has not only had a great stint, but also has gained a lot of time in the pit stop there as well.
As we see Buzita in the pits.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, that explains. Oh, because he pit on lap 1, the end of lap 1, to repair the damage. So yeah, no wonder he was briefly ahead.
Yeah.
As we now cut back to Michi Hoyer on those fresh tires, who's within now half a second of Marco De Buono. This is where De Buono will be put to the test by our championship leader here. How much damage can he do to Michi Hoyer's race, or will Michi Hoyer be able to use the strengths of that BMW once more to find a way through? You see Aurelian Brew looking a little bit forlorn after his mistake in the background, struggling to keep up with the pair of them, but Michi Hoyer senses now that this has got to be the defining moment for his race. He may not be able to catch the top 2, but if he can run clearly in third position, then he'll be able to get the max possible given the pace at his available disposal in that BMW.
Yeah, and we see that BMW is just dancing and springing all over the place. It's really moving under Mitchie, but he has control over it at all time, and it just seems effortless. And and it's extremely difficult to do. But yeah, he's just using those tires to great effect right now and getting right there up to Marco. And new tires are extremely powerful during the stint, as we can see here, and he's getting very, very close now and getting up, and this will be one of the easiest moves that Mitchie have done for this entire race. We saw at the beginning that Marco really defended well, but now getting into the corner, Mulsanne corner here, that was one of the easier moves that he has done, and that is third place for him.
Yeah, I suppose you see that and you think, well, why didn't Marco just pit for fresh tires then? But is it in terms of the time gained in the pit lane is more than the time you lose per lap potentially, depending on how you drive it, I guess.
Oh, Jules Neal's a little bit off there.
Yeah, Neal really likes the track extend, doesn't he, as much as possible. And sometimes he goes a little bit over the line there, but we'd love to see. He's an aggressive, attacking driver. And now we see Marianski up the inside into Mulsanne corner on David Levy. Levy locks up as he tries to avoid hitting the back of his fellow Porsche there. But yeah, Marianski has of course got a little bit less fuel, but also just had the opportunity there. So great driving from the Polish driver. Now he needs to make hay and disappear up the road from David Levy to get his strategy to work, because he's going to have to do some fuel saving almost certainly in the later phases of this race.
Yeah, and I can smell just a battle getting up. Prendergast here is getting closer and closer and using those tires as well. It's interesting to see what Liskovitz's plan were, if he took tires or anything, but is he triple stinting those tires? How damaged can those be at the end of this race? And Prendergast here, he's just getting closer and closer, and on the last lap of here, he just gained almost 2 seconds, so he has really been a lot faster.
Yeah, we saw Liskovitz do something a bit similar. Remember when it rained at Sebring? It was Liskovitz that was the first driver to pit for the wets, wasn't he? We're all running in the top 3. And it seems here, by a triple stinting, he's going, right, I'm going all in on track position. I haven't got the pace to get in front of these guys, so the only way I'm going to fight for the podium, or for second place at least, is if I roll the dice a little bit. The problem is it's just allowed Seb Wunsch to pull away to the tune of 9 seconds ahead, so... yeah, Seb Wunsch, even if he is double stinting at the moment, he has kept those tyres in much better condition than Liskovitz. And Prendergast got the freshest tyres of all, but now he's got a little bit of a roadblock here that's going to be going significantly slower than either of them. So he needs to make sure Liskovitz is dispatched as soon as possible and as cleanly as possible as well. We can't forget there's that championship to think about for Kieran Prendergast, as we see Marcus Crawford get a penalty, and that will bring joy to the heart of Elise Buzita, because that puts Crawford right onto his radar. Yeah,
and just with this fight here, it's just all about that championship and to get just being close there, being, you know, the forever number 2. It will be interesting to see if Prendergast will win this championship and not win one single race. He's again looking to be the closest man to get that P2, and now just overtaking here. This is a side-by-side drafting, and he has got him even before the kink, and that is a sigh of relief for Prendergast, because going side-by-side into the Indy kink is not something you want. And down into the braking zone, hard into Indianapolis here.
Yeah, that was textbook, as easy as you like there. You saw Liskovitz just had no traction coming out of Mulsanne corner. As gingerly as he was on the throttle, it was always going to give the opportunity to Prendergast. When you can't lay the rubber down as easily, it just affects your exits, and that affects your speed all the way down the straight, essentially. So Prendergast, the fresh tyres coming in handy now. And now he can focus on Seb Wunsch then. 10-second gap, but on those fresher tyres, it's not insurmountable. He could at least close up, and that could put him in the box seats for the final stint. Will Prendergast double stint again? Will Seb Wunsch triple stint, or will he play it safe then? So it still hangs very much in the balance. Prendergast has got the pace to be to stop Zevunch from just being able to change tyres without having to think about it and worrying about losing track position here. So these next couple of laps are going to be absolutely vital here as we close in towards the final hour with one more pit stop to go. Fabien Ballet is also within 7/10 of Gaspar as well then. So that could be a battle in the top 5 that we might have to keep in mind, as all the hypercars are looking pretty spread out on the whole at the moment.
Yeah, there's a gap at the front of the hypercar of 15 seconds. That's quite a lot. Morocek not being able to keep up with Simacek there, but as we just see one of the Ferraris just move inside and outside of these moving traffic cones. These GT3s that we have it is Quidel, and that is at Indianapolis. That has not been a small contact. You do not get off track in Indianapolis and have a small accident there. And that's a lot of damage.
Somebody else followed him right behind. It was the other Cadillac. I think that was Laurito. So potentially Amos Laurito involved in that as well, because we saw him coming out of the gravel at exactly the same time as Gaetan Quidel. So potentially there's heavy damage, especially to Quidel, but possibly Laurito as well. Laurito's had, really, after that great performance in Sebring in the top 5, he's had a horrible race, hasn't he? He's at the back, stuck in 14th and not really able to make much progress down like his fellow Cadillac brethren, Grigoletto and Neal.
I actually think Loretto here was a lot further back. I think he just overshot it.
Him in afterwards.
Yeah, I think he just overshot it a bit, and we see here Quidel getting into the pits. But that is a lot of damage on that Cadillac, and that's not a happy one. So and what we see here is one of the many things that sim racing has that nothing else have, and that is bending carbon fiber.
Oh yes, indeed. So yeah, the buckled and bruised Cadillac of Gaetan Quidel. It's certainly been a bit of an up and down day for him. It's some impressive pace, but a couple of major mistakes that have really cost him a chance to potentially finish in the top 10. And that's going to put him well out of contention now as we cut back to Louis Gaspard trying to fend off the attentions of Fabien Ballet in the fight for 5th then. And Ballet, who of course had a 5th place at Spa earlier this season, but he's made a couple of mistakes in the pits, has not really had a lot of good luck recently in the 2 sprint races at Brazil and at Sebring. He's had a much stronger run here, hasn't he? With Louis Gaspard as well. So it's great to see both of these drivers we've not seen run too far up the front very often this season. Finally getting things together, having clean races. And now at the same point on track with 1 hour to go. Will it be the Ferrari of Gaspard, the McLaren of Fabien Ballet? Both pretty experienced, especially Fabien Ballet, in the world of R-Factor 2 sim racing. So we'll have to see who is going to be the triumphant one. They're on similar strategies, a little bit opposite to one another, but Fabien Ballet has looked a little bit quicker at this phase. He's sort of doing the Kieran Prendergast strategy, isn't he, at this phase, going for the fresh tyres at the second stop, and now trying to make up track position.
But he's also, as we see here, he has gained 6 positions. So he was one of the guys who didn't qualify as well. So he's been at the back from the beginning. So yeah, interesting to see them battle here and being for P7, P6. It's some good points, and you can't take those for granted. And especially with a lot of drivers actually being out for one reason or the other, this is a good day to gain some points for the championship. But let's just look at the man out in front. That is some unbelievable pace that he's showing at the front, and he's now, I think that is Quidel that he's getting to lap in a moment. But he has a gap of 13 seconds over Morocek. That's a lot at this stage.
Yeah, Quidel, of course, having pit for repairs. It's no wonder he's about to be lapped by the race lead. But it is a long lap here. It's still, as you say, very, very impressive by Jene Simic. Davor Morocek, despite being the only one that's really had an opportunity to challenge Simic, he has been left in the dust, essentially, and has been struggling to keep up really with Hoyer about 10 seconds behind on fresh tyres. There's still a little bit of a threat, actually, to Marocek. It's a bit of a similar situation to Prendergast versus Wunsch, isn't it? Hoyer versus Marocek here. And you see Hoyer now gets just within 10 seconds as well. Last lap was actually 4/10 slower than Michi Hoyer. So David Marocek, rather than looking ahead, he's starting to look behind. And Simičić, yeah, he loves this place, Le Mans. He's just absolutely electric.
Oh, side by side.
See him here. Oh, and Fabien Ballet finds a way through up the inside on Louis Gaspard, and that's the advantage of the fresh tyres on that McLaren. He's got so much more confidence on the brakes. Louis Gaspard almost didn't see what hit him until it was too late, and Fabien Ballet into sixth position in class, and that is exactly what he would want.
Yeah, that was a move that was made a long way behind you. Going side by side into the Dunlop chicane, you are committed already when you're going up the kink. You have to get that so far behind. But as this battle is at this point cooling down, another one is heating up as Clement Gagard is getting closer and closer to David Levis there. And the gap is now under 1 second.
Mariansky now 7.3 seconds ahead of Mariansky. So Mariansky, is he saving fuel? I'm not so sure. He might even have to do a longer stop at this final stint just to make sure he gets to the end. But yeah, Clement Gagard has certainly seen Levy fall into his clutches there. And Gagard, who is another driver that's another Frenchman that's had a bit of an up and down day, but certainly still got a great chance of finishing in the top 10 here. And David Levy, his pace is just starting to disappear here. Maybe even he is having to save fuel because him and Farinelli were two that had to pit early in that first stint despite going a lap longer in the second one. So yeah, Gagard will know he has got a little bit more fuel to play with here, and he's going to use it to his advantage. So go towards Mulsanne. Levy goes right to the inside and into the racing line. He's very much prepared for the attack, but doesn't get a good exit here from the Mulsanne corner. And now Gagard is going to be side by side on the long run in towards Indianapolis. David Levy has lost that 10th position then to Clement Gagard. So one bad exit and suddenly you're the driver behind. But the Porsche now tucks into the slipstream, trying to get payback here into the right-hander into Indianapolis. But he's a little bit too far back. Gagard knows the job is done and he can focus on moving forward now. So that's great news there for the number 3 Cadillac.
Yeah, it was a good move there, and just using those tires and a mistake to full effect. Oh, as he's going slow. He's going slow.
Oh, so potentially there was a little bit of track cutting. No, there's a big issue there. He's slowed right down. And he's not going back up to full speed. So has he pressed the pit limiter and he can't get out of it? Something is very, very wrong with that car.
I think he's back at it. It sounded like he couldn't shift. So maybe a wheel malfunction or something like that. But he's looking to be up to speed. But all of that hard work, and he's now over 6 seconds after, and he will be gutted by that. But a mistake, I think that is a failure, because these drivers don't make that kind of mistake during the race.
Could also been a screen freeze or something like that. You never know.
Yeah.
Not everyone's got tip-top internet, even in France at the home race, sadly. But that's a big blow for Clement Gagard. But saved by the bell there for David Levy, who gratefully gets back into the top 10. And David Levy is on a bit of a top 10 streak, isn't he? Of course, he was fourth, had a very good run in Interlagos when everyone else was struggling with heating and cooling issues around him. And then Levy, I think, did get 6 points for finishing just in the top 10, despite having a few issues early on at Sebring when the rain fell. So yeah, David Levy just very, very consistent at the moment, and that's the problem for someone like Clement Gagard, who's only really he's only got 1 point to his name from finishing at Spa as well. So Gagard yet to really get on the scoring board. Even finishing 11th here would get him a decent amount of points. It'd double his score at the very least.
Yeah, but also David Levy, he wasn't here for round 1 as well, so lost some points there. And for the endurance championship, that's not a great thing. But one of the drivers who seems to be really not having a good time right now is actually Ferrari. he's lost. He's now 10 seconds behind Michi Hoyer, so that's a lot. And we just see Aurelian Brew and Galetto getting closer and closer. So what you were talking about earlier might actually come to fruition. Fabio is looking closer and closer for that top 4.
Yeah, Aurelian Brew just cannot live with the pace of Fabio Grigoletto. It's been part of the one part of the story this season of Grigoletto's this excellent pace, putting him in these strong positions here. Michi Hoy, by the way, has cut 3 seconds out of Davin Rokcek in the last couple of laps then. So Rokcek will be starting to look a bit cagey. Second position not looking quite as done and dusted as I think Davin Rokcek would have hoped. He's made a couple of mistakes that's dropped him off the back of Jene Simoncic here, but Grigoletto, this momentum has been going all his way. The only thing that's gone wrong in this race was that start. You've got to wonder where Grigoletto would be right now if he had not been spun around. And I don't want to point too many fingers because it looked like just one of those racing incidents where 3 cars into one in the first Dunlop chicane. Somebody was going to lose out, and it's a shame it was Grigoletto from his point of view, but certainly his fight back has been probably one of the stories of the race, especially in Hypercar, and it's been really, really entertaining to watch him just pick them off one by one, and everyone else has just been sort of open-mouthed in his wake, essentially. Like, how did he do that? And before you can even ask that one, he's already focusing on the next car. Now he's got 2 in close succession there. I think with the 11-second gap to Hoyer, I think the podium might be out of the question, but 4th place is definitely on for Grigoletto. And for the man 4th in the championship, that would be a fantastic damage limitation recovery drive.
Yeah, and also I'm just looking at the best lap times that he has put in, and that's a 3:24.8. The only driver, and I say the only driver who's been faster than him, is our leader Simoncic with a 24.7. So he's the 2nd fastest man out there as well. So yeah, that's a shame, and he will be gutted with that. And I think getting up there and taking that 4th place will be, you know, just a consolation prize for him.
Yeah, and we saw in the first endurance race this season that Spa, Grigoletto took the lead off of Simoncic at the start early on, led the first 20 minutes or so until he made a mistake into the bus stop, and then his race, as you said, sort of unraveled from there on. But since then, in the 2 sprints and here, he's really come on leaps and bounds, and you can really see it here that his attitude has been excellent. His pace has been superb, as you said, as you rightly point out, and yeah, he's really showing a lot of potential for later in this season. Then, so yeah, certainly Grigoletto is sort of been our best of the rest man, who's occasionally been able to do giant killing feats on big names like Simoncic, like Rokcek, like Hoyer. Sadly, today he might the best he might be able to do is 4th position, but nonetheless, beating De Bueno and Brew on what have been strong days for them is no mean feat if he's able to do it. But he's only got 52 minutes left, and we're closing in on that final pit stop, aren't we? And this is definitely the closest battle on track then, as Grigoletto closing on Brew. And Brew is just hoping he catches De Bueno before Grigoletto does, but the problem is
ooh, that BMW is definitely slowing him down there. That is Crawford in front of him, and Grigoletto is definitely getting a lot closer now, and that gap is within, you know, half a second almost. But yeah, with the last pit stops maybe coming in 5-10 minutes time, this is heating up, and it's gonna be interesting to see if any of them are now or all of them are gonna take tires, because they've now seen how powerful new tires could be.
Yeah, especially for that final stint, you really want not track position, but the pace in those tires to be able to gain track position, potentially. It is a gamble double stinting. You're seeing it's sort of working at the moment for Sevunch, but not so much for anybody else, really, as there's another slightly slow exit out of Arnage from Aurelian Brew, but the traction, the straight line speed of the Cadillac sort of saving it, evening it out here as the gap goes back up to 7/10 as they approach the Porsche curves here. But Fabio Grigoletto, is he going to be thinking, I need to make this move now before the pit stop, or will he be patient here and think, even if I can't make the move on track, I can maybe do something clever in the pits here?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just looking at some of our chat here, because they're really getting on and having some interesting conversations. But with now, I normally just sit here and control all of it for you guys, and being able to now see with my own eyes, these cars are definitely difficult to to follow, and I'm looking forward to see if we get any new beautiful liveries out there. Everything in the game looks great. The cars are great. The racing is great, especially here in the VMS Pro Series, and also on our Contender Series during the Fridays. That battle and those battles have really been heating up. But just to get a different spin on everything for the next update, it's gonna be great. As we see Greg Leto getting closer and closer here.
For that update, by the way?
I don't know. I think it's maybe in, I will say, March, April. I think it's April. Somebody in the chat will definitely give us that update or date. It's not put in stone
So it's
yet.
definitely season 2.
Yeah, it's definitely season 2. So it's gonna be this is what we have for at least season 1, and it's amazing out there, still looking great. And these drivers are not only driving for glory, they're also driving for money and for the ability to qualify for the Pro Series season 2. Oh, that's definitely wow that he kept onto that. That was close to being.
He's lost the position,
yeah,
surely, because around the outside goes Grigoletto. You saw Brew did very, very well to keep it out of the wall there, but that shows you how much the rear tyres was suffering. He was so tight on entry there. He might be able to do it on the brakes on Grigoletto if he's brave. No, he thinks better of that one. And Fabio Grigoletto goes from last to 5th then. What a fantastic recovery here. 48 minutes left to go. There's still another car within 4.6 seconds, and that is Marco De Bueno, so he didn't lose much time at all, clearing Aurelian Brew, then his older sparring partner in the other Cadillac then. So Marco De Bueno may well look a bit worried here because he's got a major problem, and it's the fellow countryman Fabio Grigoletto that's coming for that 4th position.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that we have a lot of Italians in here, and they're all driving the Cadillac. It's
apart from De Bueno, of course.
Yeah, and we thought that we would see a lot of them in the Ferraris, but the Cadillacs have really been a favorite by the Italians here, and for me it's also just the best sounding of them all.
Yeah, often when they're choosing the car, it literally comes down to, do I like how it looks? Do I like how it sounds? Do I want to sit in it for 2.5 hours or so? So there we go. It really is that simple. It's not about performance. It's about aesthetics, as we see plenty of tree line. And there is Julian Guerin in the second of our Ferraris. He's a Frenchman in the Ferrari. So
yeah,
a little bit the opposite of all our other Frenchmen who went for basically the Cadillacs, essentially. So yeah, that is an interesting choice, of course. But Guerin is still holding off Jules Neal then in that battle for 7th position, and Guerin, of course, was fighting away with Neal early. I think has he got back through on Neal in recent history, and I've not been paying attention.
I actually don't know right now. I think he got past. Oh,
was it the pit stop?
I think so. As we just saw, Jules Neal almost hitting the wall there. He's really using all of the track. But let's just look here. Printercast hasn't really been able to cut too much into Sebastian Wurtz's gap. That is still at 13 seconds. So, but Leskovic has definitely fallen completely off those tires, are yelling at him and screaming like a wife who got told that she had to be quiet.
Oh dear. Right. Okay. I don't think we want to go into any more domestic abuse allegories for these tires. So I will just say that those tires are not going to pass an MOT service in a garage anytime soon. You see Ballet. Is that Ballet lighting up the rear tires, or is that Michel Rodriguez? Then just absolutely getting a drift on then through the second Mulsanne chicane. I think it was Rodriguez.
Rodriguez was definitely in front.
Yeah, there we go. So there is Ballet.
Yeah.
He's pushing to try and catch Rodriguez, and actually lost a little bit of time. So I think it was Ballet that was drifting, but they're in pretty much very, very similar cars, the 59 and the 95. So from a distance, it's very, very difficult to tell. As we see Ballet again dipping a wheel onto the gravel there at Mulsanne, as we've seen so many drivers do throughout this race. Hoyer, by the way, has halved that gap to Marokchik now. It's only 5 seconds between the two. Hoyer has been absolutely pushing. Marokchik maybe double the tires at the last stop to try and keep pace with Simoncic. Simoncic has done the same thing, and I think Rocek has closed a little bit on Jernej Simoncic, but not by a significant amount. The gap's come from 14 seconds to 12 seconds. Rocek is really just having to make sure he doesn't make mistakes here, because he's in danger of losing this second position in class. Michi Hoyer looks like a major threat. Let's see, of course, if Michi Hoyer is going to try and double stint for the final pit stop here, because he's within the sort of range to do that now. Grigoletto also within 1.1 seconds of De Buono as well. I think that's also going to be the big battle to look at in the immediate future here. But Michi Hoyer has really had to pace himself in this race to get in contention to fight for second then. So full credit to him. He's not given up.
Yeah, and sometimes if you can't beat them doing the same strategy as the others, then you just have to mix it up, and that is what Michi have done here. And I will say with the pace that he has shown here, he almost have to change tires, because if he double stint them, I think he will lose all of that time again, because I think the others will take tires. But here, Grigoletto, now the gap is under a second. This is heating up, and he is getting that P4 soon. I think he's just, sizing it up now as we are getting closer and closer to those final pit stops.
Yeah, and Baru is within about 2 seconds as well of the battle, so De Buono has got double trouble, hasn't he, to hold on to fourth position. You see yellow flag somewhere on track. Oh, it's Jules Neal in more trouble then in the Porsche curves. Has he tripped over? That's in Indianapolis, that he's dropped it there.
Oh, and as we talked about before, you don't have a small one at Indy. That could be a major damage.
Steering looks a bit bent. He's not turning the wheel in a straight line to go in the straight. He's having to keep it at an angle. That's almost 45 degrees of the steering column being damaged there. So he's almost certainly going to have to come in early for the final stop, which is really going to compromise Jules Neal. It let Mariansky through as well into the top 8, surprisingly. And also the other thing that's happened is Clement Gagourde, we saw him have that bizarre error where the car was shut down out of Arnage. Now he's got back past David Levy into the top 10. It could well be a top 9 now if Jules Neal is going to have to come into the pits early. It looks like he's going to try and duke it out then for at least the next few minutes.
Yeah, I think he will see if he can get to the to his last pit stop and not having to pit twice, because if he pits now, I don't think he will get there. So just take one more lap, as Grigoletto is really close here, and there's a lot of traffic, or small traffic there, and easily taking down the straights as he's looking at that Ferrari. And when you're getting this close to the car in front of you, you're really getting hungry.
We're nearly at the 2 hours elapsed mark then, so the final 40 minutes left to go, and Grigoletto knows he could complete a fantastic recovery here. De Buono has really just been absolutely dropped by Michi Hoyer in this stint. 20 seconds is the gap there, and I think Grigoletto knows he just has to bide his time here. Even if he doesn't get out during the final pit stop ahead of Marco De Buono, he could potentially just complete the overtake after the pit stop. He's got 2 minutes, really. I think they're all likely going to start coming into the pits at the end of this lap, if not the one after. So there could be a couple of drivers that have extended just to make sure they're clear on fuel. It's about 40 minutes of fuel is the max, of course, here. But there might be a couple that have lifted and coasted just to extend it ever so slightly then. So this is where we've seen if the likes of Mariansky are going to be punished for pitting earlier and getting that undercut, or if they're going to be able to save enough fuel to compensate here. So it's nip and tuck, really, who is going to have enough resources to get to the end, or who is going to end up slowing to a crawl at Circuit de la Sarthe here with 40 minutes left on the clock then. And Grigoletto knows there's a brilliant opportunity here if he can just get past. Similar color car, but of course it's Cadillac versus Ferrari. Grigoletto versus his countryman Marco De Buono as they go through into Indianapolis, and he's still going to have to be tucked in behind and wait for that chance to open up in front of him.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at some of the sector times. Morocek was 0.8 faster than Simoncic in just sector 2 alone, so he's really piling on the pressure, and that gap is down to 10.5 seconds as we see Grigoletto getting closer and closer, and that is traffic in front of them. Please don't hit the Ferrari.
Oh,
they got out there. That was close.
Yeah, good awareness from Louis Gaspard there in his Ferrari, fighting in, of course, 7th position in GD3. Grigoletto and De Bueno breathe a sigh of release through the Porsche cars because they got him just before rather than during, which would have been the ultimate nightmare, essentially. But yeah, Marocek, it could well be that Simic pushing a bit earlier is now in the position where he's going to have to save fuel just to make it the next lap around a bit more. And we see in immediately comes Marco De Bueno, so he is pulling the trigger first from our Hypercars. He doesn't want to be overtaken. He wants to try and undercut the positions. This is a bold move from Marco De Bueno. Will it work out for him, or is Grigoletto going to be able to come out ahead anyway?
That is interesting, and he is the first of all of our prototypes here. So yeah, he has just looked at, all right, I can now fully fuel and get to the end. Get some nice new rubber, I think, and get out there. I think he will take tires.
40 minutes to go, so fuel shouldn't be an issue anymore. But yeah, it's certainly an aggressive call, and it's not one that many others have made. Mariansky, though, sort of has to, because his fuel tank is about to run out anyway. and now he should just about be able to get to the end. But yeah, De Bueno and Mariansky sort of in a similar position fuel-wise. It's all starting to even out in terms of the strategies, isn't it? And doesn't seem like anybody. Farinelli might be the only one, I think, that might be following them in. But even then, he was able to go another lap longer, as was David Levy. Farinelli drifting the rear tyres out. He's not really had too strong a race. Started off quite well, but he's just been losing ground to everybody else. As Amos Dorito 49 seconds ahead, isn't he? So it's really only Quidel that he's been able to beat due to Quidel crashing out, essentially. And now here comes Marco De Bueno. Lorito's going to go through around the outside, so he's going to have to do one lap behind Amos Lorito, but should be a pretty much clear air there for Marco De Bueno to set quick laps in. So this has worked out okay for Marco De Bueno, but it's a question mark. Is this going to be enough to keep Grigoletto at bay, or is he just going to be even faster out there than he is on those cold tires?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting now as the gap at the front has stabilized. Simicek and Marocek are just posting, well, down to the thousands in both first and second sectors. So really close to lap times as he's just... Oh, as we saw one of the... Oh, that was Quidel
again.
Yeah, just drifting in Indianapolis. And I can't recommend that. It's not good for anything.
It's a fun way to drive, though.
It is. Sideways is not going forward. That is not fast.
No. Not all your momentum is going in the direction you want it to be, that's for sure. But certainly it's the more dramatic way to drive, and I'm sure the folks at home watching, and it's great to see so many have stuck with us. 119 people watching concurrently for the finish, and it's been so much activity in the chat. I've not been able to read all the essays people have written, but really appreciate all of your interaction, and it's been really heartwarming to see then for VMS and for myself as well. But anyway, Jene Simic then does another lap, interestingly. So not all diving into the pits just yet. Is there a sense of a lot of our front runners in the Hypercars preferring the splash dash? No, Marocek comes in now. So he is pulling the trigger. He's seen De Bueno come in and Mariansky too. And we're seeing GD3's pit ahead of him as well. Hoyer stays out there. So the BMW's saving a bit more fuel and doing a splash and dash in a lap or two's time there.
Yeah, and here the leader in GT as well will... Prendergast is pitting as well, and he's getting, well, that gap hasn't really come down. He hasn't really been able to take anything out of Sebastian Vettel's time there. So, but getting some new rubbers.
Marocek though, look, because he's got Wunsch immediately in front of him. He's gonna have to drive out at quite an angle here to avoid hitting that 86 Ferrari. But I think the 86 got serviced first just before him, so they're gonna come out right at the same time.
Yeah, and this is where the game will just turn the car, and you will lose just a little bit of time by doing that. But let's see if what happens here. And he is really fighting the Ferrari. Oh, that's the new tires. He went up, down, and see out there.
Oh, that's exactly, I think, what happened to Hoyer at the first set of stops as well. So
yeah.
Michi Hoyer will be being told over this radio, being told to push like crazy because you've got the chance now, while Dan Marocek is doing his outlap, to potentially come in and try and jump him. Or might Hoyer just shadow whatever Simic does here and try and get the fuel tank right to the end and do a shorter stop by putting on less fuel here?
Yeah, maybe because, you know, they don't have to be in the pits for such a long time as Marco here.
Marocek's come out right behind Clement Gagord as well. So Gagord is going to be holding up Davin Marocek, I think, according to the timing screen here. There they are. So this is really not ideal for Davin Marocek. Clement Gagord is right in the way. He needs to clear him absolutely as soon as possible here as they go through Tetra Rouge here. And Marocek, I think, is a little bit too far back to make a move into the first chicane, and he's still warming up his tires too. So this is really backfiring here for Lamborghini and for Davin Marocek.
Yeah, but Marocek, we have seen here, he has been extremely fast and extremely aggressive when he has been out driving, so he will throw that Italian car everywhere it can be to get past that Cadillac. And yeah, let's see if we can get closer and closer. Now he will also use this to really get some slipstream out there and maybe get a bit more top end. So it can't be all bad, but he really needs to clear him before he gets into Indy, because that's really when he will lose a lot of time.
Yeah. David Levy's made his final stop and come out 17 seconds behind Kakba Mariansky there. So Mariansky may have been pitting a lap earlier than everyone else, but in terms of track position, this has worked out masterfully for him. He's looking to finish in 9th, I think, or potentially 8th, depending on how the pit stops all filter out. I think Jules Neal is still going out there with some steering damage, and he is starting to be caught by Clement Gagord, who's 9 seconds behind him then. So, of course, Gagord has got immediate problems behind him in the form of Davin Marocek, but he's not fighting him for position, so it's a slightly odd position. Gagord, I'm pretty sure, is heading for the pits before too long, but knowing Neal has got a longer stop, Gagord will be thinking, right, I can potentially take my time here and come out ahead then, and not worry too much about holding up Davin Marocek, unless I want to do Michi Hoyer a few favors and get on his Christmas card list at the end of the year.
Yeah, definitely. But if you're looking in your mirrors and you see that
Simic is in.
Oh, Simic is in. But yeah, if you look in your mirrors and you're seeing that bright green Lamborghini, you think, oh, is that something I want to fight? No, I don't think so.
Did you see that? Almost got sucked into the actual pit box, and almost like he bumped Farinelli just as Farinelli was finishing his stop as well. It was like bumped the microphone for good measure. And now Michi Hoyer, well, he's leading Simic, but only briefly in the pit lane due to that location of where the pit boxes are. Grigoletto's coming in as well. I don't think Hoyer or Simic thought they'd be seeing him again after the first lap, but there he is, having caught up, and the Red and Brew follows him in for good measure. So let's see, I think, crucial, where does Hoyer come out relative to Marocek? Simic almost certainly going to re-inherit the lead. Grigoletto coming in too. So it's Grigoletto and Hoyer, the two to watch. Do they come out ahead of Marocek and De Buono, respectively? De Buono is about 2.5 seconds behind Lorito, so he's not been gaining all that much time out there.
No, let's see here. So Simic is definitely out in front. Marocek just getting into the fourth chicane here, but where is Michi Hoyer? Oh, Michi, he is out, and I think he has cleared him. He's now out of the pits, and he's just crossing the finish line here.
That's double stinting from Michi Hoyer then. So he's taking the risk, and Marocek is going to see the site he didn't want to see, which is that 2 BMWs ahead of him rather than just the one. So now he's got lots of work to do in the final half hour of this race. It's very, very hectic and busy in that pit lane. Everyone's stuck together trying to get their stops out of the way. There's Grigoletto. He's going to be seeing De Buono appearing in the background surely anytime soon. No, De Buono's stuck behind Marcus Crawford at the 4 chicanes, and that's cost him. That's cost him dear. The undercut has not worked for Marco De Buono.
No, I think what we're seeing here is definitely the fuel saving as well. He has Galetto don't need as much fuel, and I think that Marco might have taken the brunt of that. He has had to be in the pits for a lot longer, but Aurelian Brew, he is also quite a lot behind actually. He's 7 seconds behind Bruno.
Eyes on.
Yeah, definitely, but he was a lot closer before. As we have a race out of the pit lane here.
Oh, so Jules Niels, has he not repaired the damage? And he's going to try and risk it out ahead of Clement Gagord, but Gagord is now right with him then. He was about 9 seconds behind before the pit stop, so Gagord,
oh, no, that's Quadell. Quadell right behind him.
Sorry. Oh, right, okay, so Quadell on a lap down then. So there we go. So where is Neil relative to Gagord? Gagord is ahead by quite some margin then, 2.5 seconds. Although that's not that far actually, so it could be that Neil has repaired the damage.
Yeah, definitely. But let's see if we can get a closer look at that car. Definitely looks a lot less bendy at this point. So I think,
Very technical term, less bendy.
it is less bendy. But the battle up here, I am interested to see how fast Marocek can get up to Michi Hoyer, because I think it's a question of when and not if he will be able to fight his way past the BMW if he has had new tires on.
And you can tell Michi Hoyer in the same voice call as Jene Simicic. Jene Simicic has probably said, "Oh, Michi, you could double stint here. That would really help me. Just make sure there's absolutely no threat from David Marocek at all in these final stages. And hey, maybe you might get second as well." So I guess that's a pretty easy sell. You effectively got a inverted commas teammate helping you out there. Though of course Hoyer and Simicic are technically sort of fighting for the championship amongst themselves as well as David Marocek. So yeah, but the enemy of my enemy is my friend, as they say. But anyway, I'm sure they're very, very good friends, Hoyer and Simicic, and Marocek too, actually. So it's great to see they're going to put it all out there on the track and see which one of them has got the strategy right. As we see, actually, Hoyer fighting back a little bit here, briefly getting the gap back over 4 seconds before Marocek uses the fresh tires through the Porsche's and through the Maison Blanche to try and cut the gap once more. 29-second gap to Grigoletto, so Grigoletto's definitely had the full service, I think, because he was about 20 seconds behind before the pit stops, wasn't he? And De Bueno, he's got Bru 8 seconds behind, so Bru could be a threat to De Bueno in this final stint if De Bueno has double stint the tires and taken a bit of a risky gamble here, but I think more than likely they are going to finish in those positions then. But yeah, Fabio Grigoletto, full credit to him. He has had an absolutely brilliant race. A more spectacular 4th position than we might have expected, given that he qualified there, I think, before the race started. So we'll have to see. It's been quite the fight back and quite a story to tell, as there is Elise Buzita doing his final stop, and he's going to come out comfortably ahead of Marcus Crawford after Crawford's earlier penalty that he'll be kicking himself for, because that's cost him 9th in class. But Elise Buzita, I think he's just grateful to get to the end, because it's the longest he's been in VMS Pro so far that he's been able to just consistently run in this race, and he's had a very, very clean race since the first lap and generally not caused too much headache, apart from now for the 311 immediately behind. I think that must be Jules Neal, I think, getting past him there.
Oh no, that's Grigoletto. See, and this is why we need custom liveries for next season. Oh my!
It was a 50-50 chance.
It
there
was
are
a
only
50
two 311s in the race.
that is true, but I think with now the the pit stops here, I think it's time for us to hear your beautiful voice going over the top 10 in the GT3 class.
Okay then, so we're just 30 minutes left on the clock after 32 laps. Sebastian Wunsch leads Kieran Prendergast by, I believe, about 8 seconds or so.
16.
16. There we go. It's ballooned out again because I think Prendergast has had to get some fresh tyres on for the final stint. Erwin Liskowitz is third, some distance behind Prendergast, and it's Callum Cripps running it. We've not talked too much about Callum, but he's had a pretty solid, if quiet, race in 4th. Michel Rodriguez is 5th, still ahead of Fabien Ballard, and it's Louis Gaspard in 7th. Regan Mitchell 8th. Elise Buzita still fighting away in 9th, with Marcus Crawford bringing up the rear of those still running in 10th position, looking for another top 10 finish in a row for Marcus Crawford. Then in Hypercar, Jene Simicic leads by 11 seconds over Michi Hoyer, who is still fighting after double stinting those tyres at the final stop to try and get track position on David Marocek. Can he hold on to it in this final phase of the race? Fabio Grigoletto's fought from last to 4th and is now consolidating that position over Marco De Buono. Aurelien Bru on fresh tyres could be a threat to De Buono, but he is 6th at the moment. Another strong race from the Frenchman. Then it's Julien Guerin, another Frenchman, in 7th, ahead of Kakpa, Mariansky, Clement Gagourde, and Jules Neal, who of course had to pit for repairs and is now a 2nd behind Clement Gagourde. So Neal and Gagourde could be a fight to watch out for 9th overall in this closing phase of the race. 1.3 seconds is the current gap as we look at Rodriguez trying to close on Cripps. Actually, Rodriguez, of course, who started at the front rows. We see yellow flags somewhere out on track, and it's Farinelli. Farinelli has lost a wheel at the Porsche curve there.
No, I think that isn't.
It's Farinelli.
Yeah,
he's the only blue Cadillac.
Yeah, but I think that is the into turn 1, into Dunlop chicane.
Yeah,
And-
Dunlop, yeah. But,
yeah.
the Dunlop corner just before the Dunlop chicane. But yeah, he's trying to reverse out, but the free wheels on his wagon, he's not going to get very far, is he? It's not like he can go out and stick the wheel back on. He's really just going to be a menace to those out there if he tries to continue. But Farinelli, fair play, he wants a finish. I mean, this could be really risky, though, if he decides to try and rejoin the race with only three wheels here.
I don't
I
think
think
that
race
the-
direction will be telling him to retire.
Yeah, I don't think he can get anywhere.
Must have been a high-speed crash there.
That's yeah, that's a lot of damage for that to happen.
Hoyer is actually slightly starting to pull away from Rockchek's 4.2 seconds the gap. He is putting in an absolutely fantastic performance as Farinelli calls it a day. And unfortunately, that's the Italian's race over. It started quite well with a promise of a finish in the top 10, but it's going to end with a retirement, and that's his third retirement in a row. He was in the top 10, 4 points from the opening endurance race at Spa, but this time Farinelli, luck was not on his side today, I think it's fair to say. And he will have to lick his wounds and come back for our next race, which of course is going to be Monza, the sprint there on February 9th in a week's time then. So make sure you tune in for that as well. But it's been quite the 2.4 hours of Le Mans so far. Only 24 minutes left to go on the clock. So it all comes down to this. And Neil is ahead of Gagord. He's made the move on his fellow Cadillac around the outside out of the Dunlop chicane there. That was a close move. And good recovery from Jules Neal, of course, after that big crash at Indianapolis. He dispenses with Comet Gagord very, very quickly there. And Neal now is going to try and chase after Kakpa Mariansky to get back into the top 8. But he'll be ruining a lost chance to finish in the top 7 here.
Yeah, and a story that we also might have here is the resurgence of the Ferrari. It looks like Marco here, he's not giving up that time. He's now only 3 seconds behind Fabio Gorgoletto there in P4. So with some new tires and a newfound closeness to the Cadillac in front, this might not be over yet.
Yeah, I wonder, has Grigoletto had to use a lot more fuel during his rise through the order to get back into 4th position? And maybe now in this final stint, he might do a little bit of saving just to make sure he gets to the end. And maybe that is why De Buono has been able to stay in touch.
Or if he has double stinted his tires to save a bit of time as well, because he was gaining a lot of time.
There was that threat of being undercut, wasn't there? So he may well have done so. It's a little bit tricky to tell from the outside because we weren't timing the pit stop. So.
Yeah, and another thing that we are missing, it would be nice to be able to see how many tires they have been using and maybe how long their last pit stop were, because that would really help us during the commentary, as Moracek is only 3.5 seconds behind Hoyer, and Hoyer is getting closer and closer to Simicek, but the gap is still over 10 seconds, but just over 10 seconds.
And it won't help Moracek that there's a McLaren right in front of him, and he has to come almost to a dead stop. Oh dear, what happened there? That was a very, very bizarre moment for David Moracek, similar to what we saw for Gagord earlier. Everything just came to a dead halt at the final corner, almost like he had a screen freeze or something, or he's back up to speed now. But that is going to surely be a huge, huge buffer now for Michi Hoyer. 6.2 seconds, so he's gained about 2 seconds in all of that there. And Moracek now is left with a much, much harder more mountain to climb, really, even on those fresher tires, to challenge Hoyer, who's just not putting a foot wrong now. He's just absolutely matching Simicic in this final stint here. And David Moracek, just a bit of bad luck creeping in, and it seems to happen in these endurance races, doesn't it? It happened to him at Spa, where he had a really slow pit stop because he cut the pit exit, didn't he? And had to slow right down. And now we see more slowdown, this time completely unexplained and baffling there.
Yeah, and what is also here, he will be kicking himself, gaining 3-4 seconds on Michi Hoyer on the best of days is difficult, even in half an hour, but with 6.6 seconds, I think that is almost, you almost can't do that, as the battle down here with the
I wouldn't rule it out.
I wouldn't rule it out, but I think having Michi to make a mistake is not something that happens often.
No, certainly not. He, especially in a game that he's feeling a lot more comfortable with, he really feels very, very in tune with this car. And we saw it at Sebring in particular, where he was just able to defend beautifully from the likes of Grigoletto and Morocek after getting ahead of the pit stop. And once he's in command, once he gets that track position, it's difficult to really shake it off him, even if you've got fresher tires. So, yeah, Michi Hoyer knows where his strengths are, and he's using them to full advantage then. But Morocek, it looked to me like that wasn't his fault. That looked to me like some sort of hardware or screen freeze or something, because I don't see any reason why he'd slow right down unless he maybe missed a gear or something really bizarre, and it was actually human error there. But to me, that didn't look like it was within his control. As we see Seb Wunsch there, looking to make it 4, and out of the way immediately comes Marcus Crawford, but he had to swerve across in front of Seb Wunsch to do that, which was a little bit concerning for Seb there. But Marcus luckily had it all in hand, under control, and there is Kieran Prendergast 8.7 seconds behind. So I think you did say Prendergast had a 16-second deficit, didn't he? He has halved it with less than 20 minutes to go.
That's to Litrovic that the time is saying. On mine,
Okay,
it's saying that he is 18 seconds behind on the. Let's just see if we can get it on the overlay itself. Actually, let's just see here. GT3s on the side, and here we get the gaps between them. So 18 seconds between them. He's just losing time. He's not really gaining anything, and the GT3s has really, for the last hour and a half, just been having a lot of gap between them and just gone around there without any major things happening to them.
The good news, though, is with Kamal Naui not being present at all. Of course, he won at Spa, the endurance race there. This means Prendergast with 2 second places, although Wunsch is going to take 3rd and a win. So it'd be interesting. He's going to be very, very close between the two of them in terms of the actual endurance championship. Bahrain, the 2.4-hour race there is going to be the decider effectively. But this is setting things up really, really nicely. In terms of the overall championship, Prendergast is definitely going to maintain that lead. But the endurance championship itself is really looking very, very close between those two now. And Seb Wunsch, you've got to praise that performance. He has been absolutely exceptional, hasn't he? And Prendergast has just struggled to really get on terms with him. And unfortunately for all the Kieran Prendergast fans, it's going to be another 2nd place. It's almost becoming a bit of a running joke now, isn't it? That Prendergast, the best driver in the field, in the GT3 field, yet to win a race, when it feels like there's 4 others that have won, but none of them seem to be leading any of the other championships, apart from maybe Seb Wunsch in the endurance-specific little series, which, let's face it, is only 3 races long.
Yeah, and that's just Mr. Number 2 there. But as we look here, I think Morocek have had another issue because he has just lost 2 more seconds to Michi Hoyer, and I know Hoyer is a fast driver, but losing more than 2 seconds.
He's lost another second to Grigoletto as well, so
yeah.
It's definitely either some more traffic or more of those technical issues coming into play that's really hurting that Morocek here. He's just got to hope that for these last 17 minutes, I think catching Hoyer is now looking a little bit of a distant prospect now, as you say. I think this is more about hoping the technical issues don't strike at a really high-speed part of the circuit, because that might really cause a lot of damage and potentially allow Grigoletto to take a shock podium here. So Grigoletto will be being told about this over the blur, saying, hey, it's not out of the question we can go from last to the podium here if Devon Morocek keeps running into issues here. So 22-second gap. It was 30 seconds, though, let's not forget. So anything could really happen in this final stint here, and it certainly could well play out that way. But I think in terms of the lead fights, Simoncic and Seb Wunsch are looking very, very assured of victory. Simoncic has really been a fantastic run for the pole sister, and Seb Wunsch has temporarily lost the lead. Simoncic, I think this will be our first lights to flag victory in VMS Pro, apart from Davin Rocha, of course, at Interlagos. And even then, I think Marcha may have briefly lost the lead to Simoncic during like the pitting on different laps and things like that. I'm pretty sure this is the first sort of Grand Chelem, I think, from Grand Slam from Jene Simoncic.
Yeah, I think so too. But one of the things that I'm just thinking about that could happen here to Morocek as well, maybe not being, hardware malfunctions, but he could be actually maybe close to the limits, the track
He
limits.
did first. He did pit first as well. He might be a bit low on fuel.
Yeah,
compared to
but
the others.
I'm saying about track limits, because if he cuts a corner, he might sometimes it gives you, you know, saying, all right, you have to slow down a lot and then not get a penalty point. So if he's close to that threshold, you know, and getting those cuts, that would explain why he had lost such a lot during one of the mistakes, because getting a drive-through at this point will definitely lose him that podium place.
Yeah, and that's why it's been so key that Grigoletto has fought back as much as he has, because it's sort of putting Gavin Rochek weirdly under pressure here. But yeah, you saw through the final chicane there on that lap, he wasn't taking anywhere near as much curves. We see Simoncic just about staying on track through Tetra Rouge there. And Simoncic actually starting to be caught by Michi Hoy, who was 10 seconds behind. Michi Hoy is now only 7.6 behind. So is Simoncic just starting to slow up, just starting to make sure everything is under control as he gets towards the end? We see yellow flag somewhere out on track.
Oh my goodness.
Big crash! And it's that Regan Mitchell in the wall, and he's lost the rear tire. That's disastrous for Regan Mitchell. That sick position, I think, that he was running in. And that is going to go the way of Louis Gaspar now. So big, he just dropped the rear end. I don't think there was any contact with another car. I think that was all on his own at the Porsche curves there.
That is a massive incident, and we could just see on the gravel there how he has been throwing it in there. And Elise Pesita, our guy who had such a bad start to this entire race, he is now getting up into P8 in the LMGT3, and that was what we talked about. Somebody could have some misfortune and more points on the board, and especially in the endurance, you will get even more points there. So he will be happy with this. He might not know that is happening yet, but when it changed for him to be P7, that will be great for him. Or P8, sorry. Yeah, P8.
Let's not give him another position, because I think the actual driver in P7 might be a bit annoyed with you. But
no, that's true.
yeah, Regan Mitchell.
Commentator's curse has hit them.
Yeah, your first try and already cursing them. But yeah, this could put at least we see it into that crucial top 10 in the overall championship, as Aurelian Brew is really held up by the 59 there. As he just has to get the power slide on through the second chicane, and that allows Di Buono, who's not really been closing on Grigoletto anymore. The gap 4.5 seconds then. So Grigoletto's got things under control, and if anything, is starting to notice Morocchek's struggles. And Hoyer, it's actually Hoyer that's actually the one the closer Hypercars. Now within 7 seconds of Jene Simoncic here. And of course, there's still quite a way to go to catch. Neil was win 3.4 seconds of Kappa Mariansky. I think that could be a very interesting battle. We know Kappa Mariansky is going to be doing a different thing on fuel to everybody else. So these last 12 minutes could be very tense between those two in the battle for 8th overall. But yeah, still Hypercar. Everything is on a bit of a knife edge here. Even for Simoncic, who seemed to have everything in hand, Hoyer has just had a really strong second half of the race, hasn't he? And that's put him right back into contention, potentially.
Yeah, and he's actually taken 1.5 seconds out of the last recorded lap. So let's see when they get across the finish line here, if that has really changed too much here. And that's one more second that he has taken out. So he's really piling on the pressure, and I think Michi Hoyer is on new tires, and I think that is the difference between these two at the moment.
I wonder also maybe Michi in the early phase of the race was saving some virtual energy and some fuel for deployment later on, because that's exactly what we saw Simoncic do to great effect at Interlagos in the sprint race. They very nearly beat Davin Rochek over the line in that heart and mouth finish that they had together. But yeah, Michi Hoyer, it's great to see the never say die, never give up attitude, of course, from our championship leader, who, if he can hold on to this second place, he is going to keep that championship lead over Davin Rochek, but will be Jene Simoncic, our new second place man then. So remember, Simoncic on 57 points. If he gets the full 39, that would put him on about 96 points, wouldn't it? With Michi Hoyer on 68 points, gaining 28 for second, that would put him Let me see. Yeah, also on 96 points, it would be identical. Okay, so we'd have a tie between our two BMWs then, if it finishes like this, of course. And of course, they've still both got to get to the end, because in the endurance races, there is that bonus point for crossing the finish line at the end of the final lap. We saw how that backfired for Kieran Prendergast. He didn't get the 28 points. He got 27 at Spa because he ran out of fuel on the final lap. So he will have that in the back of his mind, thinking, I do not want to run out of fuel yet again, even if this time it's only for second position rather than the lead then. So certainly Kieran Prendergast will have a bit of PTSD from that incident, because it may have been 4 weeks ago, but it will feel just like yesterday in the back of his mind.
Yeah, and you know, with this virtual fuel that the GT3s have also gotten introduced to, it's really difficult for the drivers to get correct, because you can actually go over the finish line and get, you know, where you look at your fuel tank and you're like, all right, I have 2 more laps, but you don't have any more virtual fuel, and you then will get I think it's a stop-go penalty for 100 seconds if you go over that limit. So you really have to be careful with the virtual fuel, as Jules Niels is getting closer and closer to Marensky up there.
Yeah, great to see this mini fight back from Neil after his mid-race off at Indianapolis that bent the steering, and he's somehow sort of just been able to claw his way back into the top 10 and challenge here for 8th position in class. And Mariansky, we've seen him use some clever strategy to get ahead. Now he's going to have to get defensive in these final 9 minutes, because Jules Neal, certainly one of our impressive young drivers, still just a teenager, Jules Neal, and he's fresh. Actually, yesterday, he was driving for Geely Esports at the Virtual Endurance Championship at 6,000 Road America. He was able to finish P3, getting that first podium, their best result in VEC Division 1 to date then, after a really, really strong performance where he was overtaking cars left and right at Road America. Now at Le Mans, it's a different challenge entirely in that Cadillac Hypercar, and he's got the Porsche in front of him that's separating him from, and he's flashing his lights at Marcus Crawford, saying, get out of the way, I got work to do here, and not a lot of time to do it in as well. So there's a bit of time pressure here for Jules Neal to make this move before he runs out of time and runs out of laps.
Yeah, and just see Michi Hoyer has lost a lot of time in the last sector, and the gap is up to 7 seconds. So just
maybe Hoyer is quite close to the track limits penalty as well.
Yeah, or GT traffic. That is definitely a GT traffic time. If you get that through Porsche curves, you're just slow through there. So I think that might be one of the things, because immediately through the first sector he is faster than Simicek, but Morocek is going faster through there as well. But yeah, one of the things that one of our local man James has pointed out in the YouTube chat is also that, you know, with almost 2 hours and 40 minutes, well, 2 hours and 30 minutes run here, these drivers might actually be a little bit tired. I don't know about you, but I'm also a little bit tired. You know, we've been on here for quite a long time, and you are just focused for such a long time, and that might be why we are seeing some of the mistakes at this point.
Well, yesterday I did a 4-hour stint. These are rookie numbers, my friend. But yeah, I can sort of don't blame Braden for dipping out early after the first 40 minutes. But grateful for your company nonetheless. I can understand first commentary, dude, just having to do 2 hours or so. It can be a bit daunting. 2 hours, it's been at least 90 minutes then. But here comes Jules Neal and his Kieran Prendergast.
Oh, that's contact!
And he taps the back, and they're both round. And that's disastrous for Neal and for Mariansky as well. Mariansky trying to clear Kieran Prendergast there, and ends up being collected by Jules Neal, and that has cost them a lot of time, but no positions. Luckily, I think Gagord still about a second behind, but now Jules Neal, for the second time in his race, has damaged the steering of that Cadillac, and now Clement Gagord is going to punish him dearly for that.
That was a huge mistake, and Prendergast will be saying, guys, just calm down, because he is fighting. Yeah, because he's P2. Yeah, because he's P2, and now we'll be interested to see how much that damage to the Cadillac will be there. But that was a huge mistake, and he just plowed directly into the rear of Morensky, and that might be some of that, you know, inexperience showing us there.
And yeah, I think Jules Neal didn't really need to do that because Mariansky was going to have a compromise run through Tetra Rouge because of having to lap Prendergast. So if he had lifted off, focused on his exit there, he could still slipstream his way back through. So Neal, the short-term thinking, obviously knowing there was only 6 minutes left on the clock, I think he panicked there, and that really, really cost him. It may well cost Mariansky too if Gagord can clear Neal quickly here.
Yeah, Gagord is looking all right. That's 2 more positions up for grasp, and
yeah, exactly.
We were talking about how this race had just settled and nobody was close to each other, and suddenly everything is heating up again as the gap between Hoyer and Simichik is around 6 seconds. So still something extremely unfortunate should happen to Simichik if I think Hoyer should close that gap. I don't think he will do that on pace alone. Commentator's curse coming here.
After the gap Simichik Chad, that now in the final few stages of a 2 hours 40 minutes race, we've got a top 3 within about 12-13 seconds of each other. That is pretty crazy to think about at a circuit like Le Mans, where it's quite common to build massive gaps essentially. But now we look at Burton Knops, who's starting to fight back at this phase of the race, wants to get back into the top 11, but David Levy in the Porsche is immediately in front of him now. So can the Dutchman beat the Spanish resident? Big lockup for David Levy into Arnage, and this is going to be the opportunity for Burton Knops as they go towards the Porsche curves. Here, the 2 Porsches in the Porsche curves, and it's the Joda Porsche that is coming right up to the back of the Porsche Penske. David Levy tries to defend. He's going to be stuck on the outside. There's a GT3 in front of them. Burton Knops goes up the inside and makes the move, and now has to go around the outside of the 54 to complete the move there. That was textbook driving from Burton Knops. Absolutely fantastic. Now he's got to chase 26 seconds to Clement Gagord though, so it doesn't look like he's going to be involved in that battle for the top 10, sadly. But we'll have to see how badly damaged Jules Neal is then in these final few minutes then. But he's still holding Clement Gagord at bay, and Mariansky's not really escaping up the road either. So it's a three-way fight for 8th now. What was looking like a 2-way fight, it's become 3-way. Thanks very much to Jules Neal, who has certainly been providing unintentional entertainment with some unfortunate mistakes there under a lot of pressure, admittedly. So it's easy to say as a commentator, but Neal has certainly been spicy today.
Yeah, and he was just thinking those guys need something more to talk about. I will give them to him. So, but yeah, it doesn't really look like he's taking too much damage there. He is he's definitely able to keep up with Miransky, who also will be furious after just getting completely punted off the track, and maybe even a bit surprised, because I don't think he thought that Jules would ever attempt a move in there, and it's not really a place that you will overtake.
I would suggest he's not raced against Jules Neal that often if he didn't think Neal was going to do something like that. He's still a teenager, you know, maybe fresh off a podium in VC GT3, of course, but that doesn't mean too much in Le Mans Ultimate, of course, in the Hypercar class. As we see Elise Bouzita is all going to hold up Mariansky into the second Mulsanne chicane. He's holding up a lot, and Jules Neal, his eyes big as dinner plates. It's going to be a rerun of before, isn't it? And Jules Neal well in the slipstream now, despite the damage to the front of that Cadillac, as they go towards Mulsanne corner, and Capra Mariansky is saying, no, you don't try that again, because it won't end well for you, Jules. Jules is going for the outside. Nothing's going to stop him now. He's going to put lots of pressure on Mariansky. Oh, they make contact at the rear, and Jules Neal has to back out there, and this allows Gagord to slipstream both of them. So it's all tightening up then with less than 2 minutes left on the clock. Simichik is still holding on from Hoyer by 3.6 seconds. That's the closest that Hoyer has been in a long while. But this fight will not let up then. Mariansky holding on by the skin of his teeth, but Neal, sparks flying in every direction. He's going for the outside into Indianapolis. He's going to go full front around the outside. That was super brave by Jules Neal, and now it's Gagord's turn to have a go at Capra Mariansky there. That was much cleaner this time from Jules Neal.
Yeah, and what a move that is. You know, you need big to go outside there, and that's really what will keep the car to the ground. That is a move and a half, and now Gagord is getting close and wants a piece of that action. But yeah, Hoyer is getting really maybe uncomfortably close here, and we will still have we are on the last lap, aren't we here?
Yep, unless Simičić can somehow break the speed of light, then this is the last lap. But is he maybe just sort of toying a little bit with Michi here, saying, oh, well, if you'd been a bit quicker early on, we could have had a bit of a fight now. But hey, I'll let you get a little bit closer. Oh, and speaking of getting closer, here comes Gagord. He's going to make a move into the forward curves. Is he? No, not quite close enough there. As you see, Quidel is now starting to close up behind, lap down on all of them, I think, here, as we go onto the white flag lap now. Looks like we've got 20 seconds left on the clock then. So Gagord is running out of time if he wants to steal 9th position off of Kacper Marianski. This is a do or die moment in the race for him. He's got the inside.
Oh, contact!
Chicane. Marianski turns in from the outside, and off track goes Gagord. He's going to have to let Marianski back through. And Marianski slows down as well. Oh, and poor Quidel didn't know what to do there, lap down. It's like, do I get past both? I'll just stay behind then, because I don't want to do more of this race than I have to, given how badly it's gone so far. But now the timing has elapsed. Simičić is halfway through the final lap. Hoyer is within 3 seconds of him. It's too little too late, I think, for Michi Hoyer. But we're going to see Hoyer and Simičić tie in the lead of this championship now, as Gagord is going to have another go at Kacper Marianski into the first Mulsanne chicane. Side by side they go. The clock is over. They're out of time here. But Gagord is going to make a move just at the death here on the final lap of the race to snatch 9th from Kacper Marianski there. And Marianski now is going to desperately try and hold on, but it's not enough. He will have to settle for a top 10 finish there. But look here at Simičić as he laps Louis Gaspard, heading to what would be his second endurance victory of the season, his second win of the season, surprisingly, and one that puts him back tied in the lead of the championship with his old sparring partner Michi Hoyer, who himself has had a fantastic race. 2.6 seconds behind. He's getting agonizingly close, but Simičić is not going to falter now, surely. He has got this in hand. He is the old pro, the old master at this, and he's back on top here at Circuit de los After 2.4 hours at Le Mans then surely going to go to Jene Simičić, top of the class once again for the Slovenian. Through the fourth chicane he goes for the final time now, and it's Simičić that wins in his BMW here at Le Mans in round 4 of the VMS Pro Championship. It's a 1-2 for BMW again, with Hoyer second on the road. A fantastic race from him. He's 2 seconds down, with Marocek surely coming through 6 seconds behind to finish third. Marianski, it's going to be a little bit too far back to make a do-or-die move on Clement Gagord. He's not Jules Neal, let's not forget, but as Neal has disappeared 3 seconds up the road from both of them, and Quidel, I think, just wants a bit of screen time here by unlapping himself from Marianski. But yeah, it's going to be surely Grigoletto now completing a fantastic recovery from last on the grid to finish 4th. And we wait now as well for Seb Wunsch, who is going to round out his first victory of the season. Simičić, our first repeat winner, but the streak goes on in GD3. Seb Wunsch, our 4th different winner in 4 different races. And Kieran Prendergast will be saying, what do I have to do to win a race in this championship? I may be leading pretty much all of the different standings in GD3, but I'm certainly not top of the pile at the end of the day in terms of the on the podium. Which is what he would desperately love to see. But for Seb Wunsch, full credit to him. He has been really on it today. He had to even make moves despite getting that pole position by 0.6 of a second, pulling out that gap early on. He's had to keep pulling out that gap in every stint. So full credit, Prendergast and Liskowitz put up a bit of a stern challenge with the strategy, but Seb Wunsch had the pace to make the difference today.
Yeah, it has been an outstanding performance for him, and yeah, just the ever number 2 Prendergast. He will be kicking himself for this one and thinking about where did this one get away from me.
Well, I think it's a rock and a hard place, because if he hadn't done the double stint early on, then he'd sort of be behind anyway. Yeah. And he'd be in a sort of similar position, and potentially Liskowitz could have got in front as well. So you can't fault the logic of Prendergast's strategy. It's just that Seb Wunsch was a bit too quick to live with today, and he's been too quick for everyone in GT3 for that matter. Through the final chicane he comes. It's going to be a first win for Seb Wunsch, the man 5th in the championship, then coming through the final chicane now. Seb Wunsch takes victory here in the GT3 class as the Cadillacs and Corvettes celebrate like crazy. You'd be forgiven for thinking Buzita behind had won the race, not Seb Wunsch, who seemed much more sedate in his celebration there. But it is the German that takes his first victory. Fantastic to see him get his name on the winner's trophy. Kieran Prendergast, though, maintains that championship lead, but has to wait a little bit longer to get a winner's trophy of his own, though. But it's going to be very, very close between him and Seb Wunsch in that endurance championship, of course, with Seb Wunsch very much taking advantage there, and Kieran Prendergast having to settle for the runners-up spot. Liskovitz will take his first podium of the season as well. That's great to see for the Polish driver. He'd been threatening to do this for a while, had a bit of a messy race in the end, crashing out at Sebring while fighting for the podium. This time, he gets to the end. Despite triple stinting on those tyres, Liskovitz is third and rounds out the podium from Callum Cripps, who gets another fourth place to add to his ever-growing collection there. Good performance from Callum Cripps. The Brabham Esports driver holds off Fabian Ballet to finish in the top 4 once more.
And our Rodriguez here is getting in, and that will be the trio of our McLarens in the almost same livery out there, getting into P6, and I think he is almost our last driver on track, to be fair, to be classified here.
Yeah, because Buzita was behind him and he's already finished a lap down on the overall lead, isn't he? But through the final corner comes Michel Rodriguez. A little bit disappointed with him having qualified so well, but he does get his best finish. 6th position in class goes to the Super Swede. So, let's remind ourselves then of the provisional results. 40 laps completed in the GT3 class, and it's Seb Wunsch that leads at the end of it. A dominant performance in the end, 18 seconds ahead of Kieran Prendergast, who nonetheless got another second position to add to his ever-growing collection. Urban Liskovitz rounds out the podium for the first time. Great performance from the pole there, with Callum Cripps getting the 59 McLaren home in 4th yet again. Fabian Ballet was 5th. Again, a good return to form for the German, with Michel Rodriguez in the top 6. Louis Gaspar was 7th, a lap down for the Portuguese driver. Elise Buzita finishing in the top 8 despite a horrible first lap. A good recovery by him, and it's Marcus Crawford that once again comes home P9. A good performance by him, but sadly Regan Mitchell crashing out late on means he will not be classified. I don't think he did quite enough of the race, retiring with half an hour to go to be classified in 10th position. Kak Pagasia also retired along with Ryan Littlemore and Valtteri Manninen. Neither Littlemore nor Manninen getting beyond the first couple of laps. Meanwhile, in Hypercar, who else but Simoncic? The pole sister lights the flag. He was on top there, but Michi Hoyer closed rapidly in that final stint with an amazing recovery to second position to beat David Marokchak, who in the end pushed that a little bit too hard and undid his challenge. But it was very, very close nonetheless in the fight for the podium. Fabio Grigoletto spun around on the first lap, a masterful recovery to 4th position in the end. 34 seconds in arrears, but you got to say he more than made up for it in that race. Marco De Buono, top 5, his best results so far of the season for Ferrari, with Aurelian Bru just behind in 6th. Julian Guerin was 7th, with Jules Neal, despite a late crash, somehow getting through in a fantastic fight for 8th position late on, with Clement Gagord just passing Kak Mariansky on the final lap to get into 9th, with the pole rounding out the top 10. Bert Knops beaten a little bit on strategy, but he did make that late move on David Levy for 11th, which was fantastic to see. Amos Larito is our final finisher on the lead lap. Quiet race for the Italian. A little bit disappointment for him, but he will be back and back on form soon, I'm sure. Gaëtan Quidel, big crash for him. At least he managed to get it home, so good job from Gaëtan, the Frenchman, with Daniele Farinelli sadly losing the rear wheel in a spectacular off at the Dunlop chicane. So then, eventful 2.4 hours of Le Mans. We hope you enjoyed watching it. It was certainly fun to commentate on. While we wait for any potential interviewees to pop up, Nicolas, what are your thoughts on that? We got a tie now in the lead for the Hypercar standings, and Prendergast just continues to stretch his legs in the lead. It seems with so many different winners, as long as Prendergast keeps finishing second, then it's almost assuring that he is going to be having in the prime position going into these last few rounds.
Yeah, and in GT3, it's definitely about consistency, and I know Prendergast will be so annoyed with not winning a race yet, but you know how you have to look at your consistency, and he's just finishing almost all the races. Spa, he didn't cross the finish line, but he was still in P2, and he will be confident because he has been up there each and every week. He has had different challenges there, but he has been the consistency in that. But in Hyperclass, we have 3 outstanding drivers really with the top 3 then that just battling out there, and even though it looked like Hoyer were the weaker of the 3, he was definitely there at the end and looked to be strong here. But it was so sad that we didn't see what the Gregoletto were able to do, because this was really maybe one of the strongest performances we have seen. I know he was strong at Sebring, but I will say today he almost looked even stronger, and just as we looked there from the last pit stop until the finish flag here, he actually took 10 seconds out of the leaders. So really good recovery race for him.
Yep, certainly. Although, on the other hand, if Grigoletto had a quiet run to 4th and just been a little bit too far adrift of the 3 leaders and had not had that incident at the start, maybe him having to fight his way through to 4th has flattered him slightly. But nonetheless, the maturity on display during all those overtakes, the way he kept his head despite the worst possible start to the race, was really impressive, really entertaining to watch. I think Fabio Grigoletto is very much in shout for driver of the day in Hypercar, and I think you can't really take away from Seb Wunsch in GT3 as well. Great to see him take his first win. So then, next in our Pro Series is Monza on 9th of February in a week's time, where myself and Braden will hopefully be back to cover that. Well, I certainly will be, and Braden, I'm sure we do have to thank Braden for his commentary today, even though he had to leave early. But I'm sure I had to leave to have dinner after the first lap, so I guess it evens itself out over the course of the season. But nonetheless, I have to thank you as well, Nicolas. So, but what I was also going to say was, if you can't wait until next Sunday to see our sprint race at Monza, we've got a 40-minute contender round at Monza, of course. So that is going to be really exciting to see as well. If you want your Le Mans Ultimate VMS contender fix, we're going to have that round going at 7 p.m. Will be the start of qualifying, with the race starting at 7:30 p.m. and lasting, as I say, 40 minutes at the Autodromo Nazionale Monza. So that is this coming Friday. Make sure you don't miss that. But from myself, from Nicolas Domino, from Braden, and everyone here at the Virtual Motorsport Series, it's congratulations to Simoncic and to Sebastian Wunsch. We'll see you next time for the next exciting round of this ever-growing, ever-dramatic championship at Monza. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye from the 2.4 hours of Le Mans.